Hello, everyone, and welcome to Elephino Open number 24. I am Elephino. I am pleased to welcome special guest, Jump. How you doing today, bud?
Hey, I'm doing fantastic. I'm ready to get some Hearthstone. We've seen a lot happen in the NA spring prelims, and so now I'm ready to get our own little taste of Hearthstone up and ready to go.
Yeah, definitely. I have a lot of high skilled level players in here. Actually, several of the players that were in the Americas region I noticed from playing in this tournament. So they got some points to help them qualify into the Americas, and some of them did extremely well. I won't point out any names so that I don't want to forget any, but several players did extremely well. And if you want to get involved in some of those open tournaments or involved in the Americas region tournaments, open tournaments is a great way to do so. I think they made up like 22% of all the points earned by players in that tournament, if I'm not mistaken. So
Yeah, it's a lot. Doing anything and everything you can to get those points, it definitely helps you as you get to the later stages of the year. Once you start getting, or trying, should I say, to get into the spring championship. And so definitely with events like these, I mean, you get 3 points for winning.
right.
So definitely something that is at the forefront of these players' minds as they progress through this long, almost a grindy tournament in a sense.
Sure. Yeah, a little background on this tournament. It's a in case you're new to the whole scene. This is a 256 player tournament. They play through a single elimination best of 5 conquest with a ban. So basically, if you're new to Hearthstone and tournaments, conquest format, uh, each player brings 4 classes that they would like to play. Their opponent is able to ban one of them, which leaves each player with 3 eligible classes. Now you must win with all 3 classes in order to take the match and the overall victory of the match there. And then you advance on into the tournament. So what by that means if you lose with a class, you can still play with it again because you have to win with it to progress in the tournament. So I hope that made sense to some of the players at home that may be new. Obviously, uh, pretty common knowledge, to most of our viewers. But in case you're new to the Hearthstone tournament scene, I want to give you a rundown on that. Let's go ahead and show the players the classes that they will be playing with. So this first match is going to be between Deathlore and the Maverick. Jump, you want to give us a rundown of the classes we'll be seeing from those players?
Yeah, so Deathlore is going to be running the Druid, the Warlock, and the Warrior. He did have his Shaman, or Shaman if you're Raven, banned away. And then the Maverick is going to be playing Mage, Rogue, Shaman, and then the Warlock is actually what got banned away. And I'm really interested to see kind of what variations both of these players decide to bring to their decks because, like you said, there's 256 players in this tournament. And so the opportunity and the ability to really tech towards your opponents becomes a lot harder because RNG comes into play and you have no idea what you're going to see. So, it's really hard to make the predictions on what we're going to see across the board because there's just so many different kinds of options for all of these players to kind of take part in.
Yeah, definitely. Let's show we'll show the players the bracket now that I have it all set up for you. So as we mentioned, the top match you'll be showing first is going to be between the Maverick and Deathlore. So that will be coming up here first. And the other side of our bracket had a little bit of a slower going. So maybe had a lot of control-y decks to that lineup, but they should be ready to go by the time we get through here. So, but anyway, that will be between Cedo and a player to be named yet still. So those will be coming up shortly, and then we will wrap up the evening with the championship match, which will obviously be between both of the victors of these semifinals matches. So that's a little overview of what will be going on this evening. Lots of Hearthstone action. I hope you're able to stick around and enjoy it with us. Let's get into the first game as soon as the players are ready. So, Jump, do you have any insights or any kind of overview on the decks that they may be running and
so
any kind of speculation?
out of both of these players, Deathlore is playing a warrior, and I said this before, and I'm going to say it now. The only thing I want to see before the night is over is that infamous pirate dragon warrior deck. We've seen the rat kind of have his own variation of it, Amnesiac as well,
Sure.
and then the pioneer of that per se in Zalay. They've really created a very interesting concept. It's very smorky, but at the same time, it definitely is something that is enjoyable to watch and enjoyable to see play out because of how new it is in the scene, especially because the prevalence of control decks right now in the meta is just so high. Having these different kind of styles is definitely something as a viewer and as a fan of Hearthstone that you can enjoy to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of expect maybe it happened on one side of the tournament and not on the other, but it seems like either players are running all aggro decks and being very aggressive and just taking the games very quickly, or they're going with the control lineup. There seems to be a lot of the either very controlling or very aggressive, and most of the mid range is kind of dying out, with the possible exception of like mid range hunter. But I think overall, it seems to me either control or aggro is the favorite of most players at the moment.
Yeah, I think that it really just, like you said, it's really an all or nothing. You don't really see many players bring, say one control and then the rest aggro. They kind of shift more towards one play style. And
absolutely.
something that we've seen as a big difference between North America and Europe is the stylistic differences that you have from that. So you look at this match, for example, we don't know exactly where Maverick is from, but Deathlore is from Greece. And so he has that European style. So is there a chance that we actually see these more heavy decks? I mean, he is going for the Druid Warlock Warrior. This could be a zoo. In a big tournament like this, having that zoo in your repertoire is a possibility. The Aggro Druid we've seen as well as an option. And then the Temple Warrior we've seen rise as well. But at the same time, with all three of those decks as well, you can kind of bring a more of a control lineup onto things. So all in all, I think it's definitely going to be interesting to watch and kind of interesting to dissect.
Yeah, absolutely. We're getting ready here to go into game number 1 of the first semifinals match of Elephino Open number 24. Again, we got the Maverick on the top of your screen, opening up with Rogue, and Deathlore on the bottom of your screen, opening up with that Druid. It appears the Druid may be running the Beast variation that we saw pretty prevalent in both the European and the Americas region preliminaries that you mentioned. And then obviously Rogue is just super strong right now in both tournaments and on ladder. So no surprise there to see Rogue and try to get out with a really nice start here at the very beginning of the match.
Yeah, we saw the Power of the Wild in the mulligan, so like that's definitely definitely going to be an option. I'm excited to see exactly how this draw works out, because that's what a lot of these Beast Druids really come out to. It really you not only have to get some solid board control early, but just finding out what you're able to get through those draws with the Raven Idols, as well as being able to switch things around. So nothing too out of the ordinary. Just going to throw down the saplings there for Deathlore, and now you're kind of at a standstill if you're here at the Maverick. There's really not too much that you can do. You don't have a prep in your hand to throw off into that Fan of Knives, so you're kind of just forced to pass. And this is a difficulty that the Miracle Rogue faces in some of these earlier turns. If they can't get bodies down and the enemy's allowed to build up some kind of a minion advantage, then you really have to start wasting some of your burst to get that clear off. So it's a little slow, but at the same time, it's a decent start here for Deathlore.
Sure, definitely. The Maverick, he obviously could have coined a weapon out there, but you'll never see a player, do that against double 1/1s, especially with Fan of Knives in hand. So I assume we'll see a coin SI7, clean up that very nicely, and take the aggressive or the tempo back on the board. I think coming up here very quickly, especially with a slow turn 2 from Deathlore after he sees that.
Yeah, he's going to throw down the Raven Idol. He's going to end up going for the spell. He has the Power of the Wild if he so chooses. We already know that he runs this in his deck, but he is going to end up taking that to have. Now, we don't, obviously, Maverick doesn't know that this Power of the Wild came into hand, so there is the option, if you say, to throw down the Phantom Knives, but like you said, it's just much safer. Throw down the SI Agent, get the 3/3 body on, force Deathlore to actually deal with that on board, and as such, he's going to do it, and let's kind of, see what he's going to rock with next. Power of the Wild, definitely going to happen. He's just going to summon a Panther, get a body himself, and run face with that sapling.
Yeah, that was a huge pickup for Deathlore. Even though he went with the spell, he was able to get a minion off of it. And he's got a very flexible card and gave him a play this turn. Otherwise, it was going to be Hero Power Pass, which would have felt really bad and would have put him really far behind on the board. At least now with this, he's able to keep up and see if he can. He was hoping to bait out a trade from the SI7, but Fan of Knives is gonna take care of that.
Yeah, gonna keep it very simple, and he's got the body as well. So now you kind of have to make a decision. He does draw into the Fandral to be able to have that effect, but with really nothing too much to get off on. I mean, he can throw down the Fandral here and get the and get the double off on the Druid of the Claw, but I mean, it can be combated very easily. You don't have there's so many different options that the Maverick can throw onto this, especially with that 3/3 body in the SI agent already down. So it's kind of a decision making on which direction he's going to go. He could swipe, but again, it's all about getting that board control early. So I wouldn't be surprised if he actually does throw out the Phantom just for the body to try to get it done, because you do need to keep that Violet Teacher to try to get some spells and try to get those apprentices out to kind of help swarm the board a little bit better.
Yeah, it feels pretty good. At least both of those minions that he has as an option have 5 health, so you know that the Maverick will have to use something else besides just the SI7 and the dagger to deal with it. So that may get you a little bit ahead on board and force him to make his turn a little bit more awkward. If he wanted to play like a Tomb Pillager here, he wouldn't be able to do that as well as kill your Violet Teacher. So you might have thrown off his curve a little bit, assuming Maverick had a 4-drop, which obviously we know that he does not, but there was the potential there to throw off the curve.
Yeah, and you really need to keep on the Fandral because you're running this beast deck. You've got Power of the Wild, you've got your Ravenous, you've got all of these cards that benefit from the double effect that Fandral allows you to have. So you're okay trading off this Violet Teacher because you're going to have more value in the Fandral just in the long run with everything. And as it seems, it looks like we're just going to have a lot of pressure being put on the board by the Maverick. He does throw the Cold Blood onto the Eviscerate to kill off that Violet Teacher, and now with 5 power on the board, it's going to have to kind of change the decision-making of Deathlord, because if he just decides to throw down the Druid of the Claw and rocks up with the Taunt, he gets immediately punished by the Sap, which we know Maverick has in his hand. So it's almost forcing him to play off curve a little bit, go for that swipe just to stop the tempo that he has. But as we say that, he says, nope, instead, I just want to throw this down, and if Maverick chooses to do so, he could punish this pretty hard.
Yeah, I like that play last turn by Maverick. Some players may have been tempted to go with the Sap there, even though it was a pretty weak Sap target, simply because it was very efficient in that moment. But I like that he saved it here, knowing that Deathlord was going to have larger minions and taunt minions. And forewent the mana efficiency last turn in order to have the Sap this turn. I think that was really huge for him, and maybe a huge swing play, and a good call from the Rogue player.
Oh yeah, and especially with your playing Miracle Rogue, in these earlier turns, the more damage that you can get in onto your opponent, that makes life all the easier, because as you get to the later turns, you have the cycle with the Auctioneer, and you have more opportunity to try to get something done. But so it's really good for you to push as much damage early, and because of this kind of puts Deathlord in a really awkward position. He doesn't want to throw down the swipe. He doesn't want to waste that for the opportunity to swipe some Violet Apprentices if something were to happen. So he's forced to play off curve again, throws down that Druid of the Claw, and it's going to get immediately responded here by the Maverick to get something done.
Yeah, it was pretty awkward play for the Maverick. He could have cleared off the Druid of the Claw and set up the Auctioneer, but that would have left him really open to the swipe from Deathlord. And so I think it's a good play that he went with the Azure Drake here, as opposed to the Gagaton Auctioneer. I think that was a big play for him. He was able to do it very mana efficiently, clear off the Druid of the Claw without taking any more damage to the face. Because even though they don't have Force of Nature Savage Roar, it doesn't feel super great to take too much damage to the face when you can avoid it and do it a little bit more cleanly. Like I think he did that turn.
Of course, and he's got the 4/4 body as well. Now he forces the swipe out of Deathlord, and Deathlord's forced to throw down Druid of the Sailor, turns it into the Stealth, so he's going to have that 3/2 body there. And so now you're in the awkward position for Maverick. He doesn't have too much. I mean, you can throw down the Auctioneer if you want just to have that body. You know that the swipe is gone, but this could get combated very easily, just with the hero power that it has. So Maverick is just going to play this pretty safe, pretty cautiously. It looks like he's just going to dagger up. Might just decide to pass here. And now is kind of a big decision for Deathlord, because You can either decide to throw out some different options with your Fandral, but instead, if you really just want to go with that extra pressure, you could throw down the Ragnaros. Now, to that effect, Maverick does have a sap. He can actually get some cycle with the Gadgetzan, but there's a lot of options here for Deathlord to choose from if he so chooses.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised. Last turn he went with the Jungle Panther as opposed to the Druid of the Flame. I was a little bit less mana efficient last turn. I just wondered if there was a reason for that. I'm sure he had one. These are both very high skill level players. I'm just curious if you see a reason as to why he would have set up that. Maybe because he wanted the 3 attack over the 2 attack, would have helped him clean up. Maybe that and a hero power could have dealt with Gadgetzan Auctioneer. Maybe he was setting that up.
Yeah, again, it's all about pushing that damage and kind of threatening that life total of the rogue, because the rogue, we're not seeing rogues run very much heal at all with the change in style with the new standard format. You don't have that heal bot anymore, so you run. Some rogues are only running that one Earthring Farseer, so not having a lot of heal as an option definitely threatens your livelihood once you get this extra pressure on. So I like this decision to throw down the Rag because of what it allows you to do in that extra pressure. You can see that there's actually a decent little combo starting to get pulled up. You're going to have the Fandral Druid of the Claw potential here on turn 9. And now, because of the awkward situation that Maverick is in, he doesn't have any preps. He doesn't have any other way to really deal with this Ragnaros outside of the sap. So he's going to stop things soon. But if Deathlord is able to clear this out, he could just throw that Ragnaros right back down, get a lot of extra pressure, and really terrify the Maverick and the position that he's in with this rogue.
Yeah, the Mavericks had to beat some really slow turns the last couple turns. He had a super slow turn the previous, and now here with just being able to play one spell with the Auctioneer, that never feels super great. And now we're looking at lethal from Deathlord.
Yeah, so he's going to be able to take him out, and the Druid takes down the Rogue for that first win. So a pretty solid setup going for that early win. And now he just has the Warlock as well as that Warrior left. So I'll throw this one to you. So now if you're the Maverick, you know that the Warlock and the Warrior's next. What do you try to do to come up and even up this series with the position that you're in, since you did just lose that Druid Rogue matchup?
Well, I think personally, you'd probably throw the Druid back out there again. If you were the most comfortable with it in the first game, you might go with it again if that's like your favorite deck. But he's going to go a different route, and he's going to go with Warrior here in game number 2.
So he's going to go for that Warrior. It looks like it's going to. We don't have too much on it, too much knowledge on it quite yet. He does have the Blood to Ichor, but it looks like it's going to be Tempo Mage here coming out of the Maverick, and I really like this. Now, the difficulty that this faces is, yes, you do have to be worrisome of that fiery wind axe, but at the same time, if this Maverick is able to get off enough tempo, get himself onto the board in a good sense, and Deathlord doesn't have that wind axe, then that's when things could really start getting scary for this Warrior.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I meant the Rogue there when I talked about queuing up the Druid again. I had to queue up the Rogue, and obviously the Druid already won, so he's unable to play Druid again. So I apologize for that on my end.
It's quite all right. We all have our mistakes, but this is kind of that situation that we are talking about now, where if Deathlord doesn't have that the axe on turn 2 to be able to combat. This Mana Worm, that's where this Tempo Mage really starts to create a kind of a scary board sense, because Maverick got really lucky. He had the Mana Worm as well as a Sorcerer's Apprentice, threw down the Arcane Missiles, and now, again, you're kind of in a sticky situation because you can opt to throw down this Acolyte of Pain just to get a body on the board, but I mean, it gets combated almost immediately by everything that he has. So he's just going to decide to go for a little bit of a better sense, have a little bit of an extra board. So he's actually just going to decide to Blood to Ichor there, get that 2/2 slime, and then try to get a little bit of extra armor potential with that Armor Smith.
Yeah, I like that play here from Deathlord. Even though you're expecting to probably lose both of your minions, at least they do set up very nice trades going the other way. If the Maverick isn't able to clear them with spells or some other mana, you're going to get a decent amount of armor here, and you set up your board to clear off the early pressure from the Maverick. So I like that there from him. But Maverick had a pretty good answer to it with the second missiles. Even though it did build up the armor, it's not very consequential here in the early game.
No. And lucky enough as well, Deathlord doesn't have that great of a turn 4. He doesn't really have anything to play on curve. Again, he isn't able to draw through with that fiery wind axe to try to get something done. So you kind of have to be forced in a sticky situation. You can either try to go for some extra board clear to get that mana worm that's going to, as you know, grow most certainly on the next turn 4 coming up for Maverick. But that wastes your blood to Ichor. You don't get the slime, you just get the damage for the clear. And then I guess you could throw down the Acolyte of Pain, but if by chance Maverick has a Frostbolt in hand, then it gets punished really easily. So it's kind of an awkward decision for Deathlord. This early draw and curve not really working out too much into him. So he's actually just going to try to get as much extra pressure as he can, force this hard clear coming out of Maverick with that Frothing Berserker, as well as that Blood to Ichor. But it's going to get, again, combated very easily. He does have the Fireball in hand, and it looks like he's just going to use it to try to push some extra damage and really gain that tempo with that Mana Worm.
Yeah, he has I'm kind of surprised. He could have cleared that off a little bit more efficiently with the Mana Worm and the reload of the Azure Drake, but I do like the play that he made here. He saw that Deathlord was fizzling out on minions, so while it may have looked a little bit questionable there, I really do like the play from Maverick and dealing with it in that manner, keeping the minion on board and being able to extend his lead here now on turn 5 with that 5-drop minion and another minion on board to clear off whatever Deathlord comes back at you with. So I really like that play there to use the Fireball in that situation.
Yeah, and now Deathlord didn't have anything to do for the turn 5. All he had available was to throw down that Acolyte of Pain. Again, trying to get a body to get something done, armor up. And now Maverick is in a pretty good spot. He doesn't end up deciding to Frostbolt. He ends up wanting to save that, I would assume, for something of a weapon. Does end up trading the Mana Worm off, as well as getting down that Ethereal Conjure. He ended up taking the Kabbalist's Home from that, so he's going to have a lot of options at his disposal with those extra mage cards. And now with Karen coming down, an immediate response by Maverick. He's just in such a good
response.
It's so disheartening. It's everything you throw down, Maverick has had an answer for, and it's just working out so well in his favor in these earlier stages.
This could be a chance for Deathlord here. He was in a pretty unfortunate position, especially with that Karen getting polymorphed, as you mentioned, but now he's finally able to take initiative on the board. He has finally cleared off the Maverick's board and been able to establish a minion of his own. And we'll see if this is enough to hold it down for him. Unfortunately, this Azure Drake with the Frostbolt looks like it's going to put an end to that.
Just another easy response. It's been pretty much like clockwork here for the Maverick. Every minion, every opportunity that he has to take advantage of Deathlord, it's pretty much come down onto this. And now finally he says, if I can't draw a weapon, I'm just gonna make one. He's able to throw that Malkrok down and trying to get some damage off. It's not the weapon that he wanted. Stormforged Axe isn't the strongest of the potentials, but he does have the 3 charges, so he'll have a little bit of something to extra down to try to get a body onto it. But again, this can be a very easy clear here for the Maverick. He can trade in the Azure Drake if he so chooses, but instead, actually, no, he has the Arcane Blast, so yeah, that's gonna go down. He's gonna ping that down as well. So 2 very strong minions on the board. That Azure Drake, keeping that Azure Drake with that spell damage is so big for these tempo mages. So it's gonna be a pretty good spot that he can get himself in, and Deathlord is really struggling to get some kind of board control thus far in the game.
Yeah, that's like Tempo Mage 101 right there. The whole goal of their deck is I'm going to play the minion that I want to and remove the minion that you just put on board and just maintain the aggressive and the tempo on the board there. So that's huge plays by Maverick. He's been able to wind in his spells along with the minions, set those minions up, clear the opponent's minions very effectively, and he's just had a really good start here in the early game and transitioned into the mid to late game very nicely. And a lot of times Tempo Mage will fizzle out in like that middle to late game. If they have like all those low cost minions at the beginning, they may have the early aggressive, but if they don't cycle into those late game cards like you saw with the Azure Drake and now we got the Archmage Antonidas, they could easily fizzle out if they just get a bunch of spells in hand and no minions. But that didn't happen to him yet.
Yeah, and now we look at the hand that the Maverick has. Not only does Cabalist help something, but the Arcane Intellect as well. And now it's just a super easy clear here. And the board control that Maverick has been able to create this entire match is just death-defying. He's got the Antonidas as well as the Flamewalker in hand too, so he's going to be able to answer anything. But to Deathalore's effect, he is able to try to get some card draw with that Battle Rage, and it's just a sticky situation. He's going to have to end up wasting the Slam onto this Azure Drake to try to just eliminate some kind of tempo. He can even throw down the Ravaging Ghoul as well to actually full clear this board. But just looking at the hand that the Maverick has, it's going to be handled and dealt with very, very quickly.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess you kind of have to in this situation. It doesn't feel super great, but at least you've...
It's a lot of resources, too. So many resources just to kill 2 minions. Now, you do have Varian left, so like if you survive this turn, you could get lucky with some board off of that 3-draw from Varian. But again, look at what the board here for the Maverick has. He's going to be able to throw Violet Teacher as well as a Flamewalker, so he's going to get a bunch of extra power from this. And this is where that Tempo Mage really starts to take effect once that Flamewalker comes down. And it's going to be essentially, it's going to be a do or die here with this Varian as Deathalore is forced to throw this down, and now we get to see what he comes up. Whirlwind's not going to help him.
Not a good one.
Too much.
I was just going to say Grom would be a nice one. He can clear out that Flame Waker, and he gets it. So I'll see if that's enough to hold him off. That Antonidas, though, it's going to be painful. You can generate a Fireball and clear off one of these 7 health minions pretty effectively. But one's going to stick around, it looks like.
Yeah, they're gonna have it, and you can just look at the hand of the Maverick as well coming into something on the next. Luckily, luckily it was in the heart of the cards that Grommash came down to kind of help out and see and eliminate that Flamewalker from the board. But there's still, again, a lot of different options that the Maverick can kind of pull onto this. And now Deathlore is kind of making a decision. Does he save onto the weapon? Does he just kill off this 1/1 for some apparent reason, or does he just decide to push for some extra damage? And I think it's just going to be better if he holds onto it, which he does. You need that extra 2 damage to push through something if the Maverick decides to throw it down. And now is kind of a do or die time as the Maverick just going to try to draw some cards and just continue to build that presence with those Violent Apprentices.
Yeah, Deathlord looking like he may be able to hold on to this with those large minions. The Mavericks kind of run out of removal for them at this point in time. So we'll see if he's able to pick something up off there. He does get a Frostbolt, which will at least stall it down. So he can clear one of these minions if he wants to, or just stall it out. I think he'll just take a stall out here and clear off the 3/3.
Yeah, he's got he's got a lot of options to try to get something done. But at this point in time, you have to stall yourself out. You have to try to get something. Now, a good thing here for Deathlore is he does have that Whirlwind, and you're gonna see him using it almost immediately.
Yeah,
because he has to clear the minions off of this board, because he can throw that down. He's got the option to throw down the Fierce Monkey. He's kind of hesitant right now because he's wondering, okay, as many cards as he's drawn, is there a chance that he has a Flame Strike? We know he doesn't. Deathlord does not, though. So he's going to have to be worrisome on it, but he does decide to throw it down. If he ends up drawing Flame Strike, it would be bad, but it doesn't end up happening. However, the Thalnos does come out, so you can use those Arcane Blasts to take out the Grommash. And again, Maverick drawing into all the right answers for this Deathlore pressure.
Yeah, we'll see if he wants to use it here. He could take a little bit of a risky play with Antonidas and see if he can generate the fireballs to finish him over the top in the next couple of turns. But it looks like he is going to take a little different route with the Azure Drake here and use the removal of the Arcane Blast or the Forgotten Torch. It's up to him, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, at this stage in the game, you still have Antonidas in your hand. You still have a lot of opportunity to, keep yourself in good light. And so that Deathlord has one card in his hand. He's gonna draw a second one, but he doesn't really have that much to be able to handle it. So he's perfectly safe with the 19 health that he has. So he is just relying on that board presence, and that's something that he's been able to successfully do so far this entire game, is establishing that board presence, clearing off as much of that pressure that Deathlord can provide, And as a result, it's keeping him in this good situation. Now, Deathlord is going to have a good response onto that Sorcerer's Apprentice with the Fiery Wind Axe that he finally draws, 3/4 of the way into the match. But at the same time, again, look at what you have in the hands of the Maverick. He can simply throw down the Antonidas as well as the Roaring Torch and just start to stack up all that damage because Grommash is gone, so there goes all of the burst. There's no way that Deathlord is able to get 16 damage in one turn. And so this is kind of sealing the deal for the game because he was able to luckily go into that Roaring Torch, and now is kind of a difficult situation. It ends up being the game-ending decision as Deathlord goes down and the Maverick brings it back to 1-1 here, taking out that warrior.
Yeah, that was huge. Really well played on both sides, but most notably, I think of that turn from the Maverick where he was able to, he played that Azure Drake, he coupled that with the Sorcerer's Apprentice, allowed him to play all those removal spells, even being buffed up by the Azure Drake. I think that was a huge play by him, and he did an excellent job of spotting it, removed both of those large threats, and put Deathlord in a very awkward position and difficult to come back from, and he wasn't able to do it.
Yep, and so Deathlord is going to go on to that Warlock. It is going to be Zoo, so it's not going to be the Reno lock that we've seen pop up time to time in the spring preliminaries. It is going to be that, and it looks like it's going to be Totem Shaman here for the Maverick, and already we can see that Master of Evolution popped up as well. I love seeing the possibilities that can have up. He's going to mulligan away, but we'll see at this match at some point. So, not too sure. And I like this matchup in favor. I like this matchup for the Warlock because of what he can have through. But the decision for me is whether or not the Maverick is running. Is running that Lightning Storm. We do see in the hand that he is. We've actually seen some of the Totem Shamans just cut out that Lightning Storm from their lists. But luckily for Maverick, he knows this is a big tournament. He knows that there's a good possibility of these Flood Zoo kind of these Flood-style decks. And so as a result, he's just going to keep that Lightning Storm in. And it's really going to help him. And Deathlord's going to have to make sure to play around that as we get later into this match.
Yeah, the Lightning Storm is pretty good against Zoo, as you pointed out. It can be pretty good against Aggro Shaman, which is still quite popular, and it can also be fairly good against Hunter, which has a lot of those 2 to 3 health minions that they can flood the board with, even like Unleash the Hounds or just various other smaller minions that they have, and that can be a great answer and a great swing play for the mid-range Shaman.
Yep. And so now we see just some trading of board control. I like the decision to, I like the decision to go ahead and throw down the Trog. You saw the Abusive Sergeant already come out, so now you're gonna have to hope for, I don't know if he throws down a Peddler and gets the Mortal Coil or just draws into a Mortal Coil, and so he's not gonna have any really reason to kill it at this time.
Defender here.
He does have the Defender, yeah, to just get it in out of the way. I kind of like this decision again because you're stopping the potential tempo that the Shaman can create because there's so many different kinds of overloads in these Totem Shaman decks that just stopping that Tunnel Trog in his tracks is definitely important. But that loses a piece of the taunt, and so once that Doomhammer comes out or once you actually get some solid amount of board out of the Shaman, then that's where the lack of the taunts could hurt you if Deathlord isn't able to establish a board himself.
Yeah, you do bring up a good point. They usually don't run any heal, and especially since a lot of the heal has been removed in like anti-heal bot, really the only thing he may have for heal is like Earthen Ring Farseer, which is not very much. And as you pointed out, the Maverick with the Doomhammer, if he's running that, which I assume he is,
yeah,
put on a lot of pressure, and really the only way for him to stop it would have been that taunt. But I think it was just a too clean there on the Tunnel Trog, got the value off of that, prevented it from drawing out of control.
Yeah, now Deathlord is kind of, he's got some decisions. He can decide to, tap and throw down the in-game boss. That does actually end up being what he wants to do. I like this. It's keeping the board simple, but at the same time, he has enough presence, and especially with the multiplicative ability of Imp Game Boss to create some extra minions on the board, that's definitely going to help him out onto this. Let's see what RNG pulls us. It's going to end up being the Spell Totem. It's not going to end up being too much onto it, but now is a big decision for the Maverick to really gain some extra tempo and some fantastic board. So he's going to throw down the thing from below, going to be able to have that 5/5 body onto there, kind of stop Deathlord from really getting into something. And he knows that there's really not many ways that he can handle this. He can throw down the power overwhelming onto the Imp Gang boss to try to get something through, but it looks like actually Deathlord is running a Soulfire. I haven't seen that many Soulfires run in a lot of these Zoo decks, but it does look like he has teched it into it. So he can decide to Soulfire and get the clear on the 5/5 body, but you have to hope to God that Sea Giant or Leroy doesn't get taken out, because then you put yourself in a difficult spot with a loss of one of those win conditions.
Yeah, definitely. I think you would, if you're going to go with that, you'd have to go with the Sea Giant first and then throw out the Soulfire, which looks like he might be hovering over. But I do like the Soulfire tech in there, mostly because Warlock lost one of their big spell removal to get around Taunt in Dark Bomb.
Mm-hmm.
That is no longer viable in Standard. So, not viable, but it's no longer available at all in Standard. So I think that's a lot of players are being forced to run that Soulfire if they want that spot removal that they lost. Ooh, Leroy being lost is very, very unfortunate.
Yeah, that's really rough, especially because you have the 8/8 up with the Sea Giant, and so you're going to hopefully get some extra damage in to have something. Now, we know it's not going to work out in this specific instance because he did have the Hex that he had since the beginning, but now you're in a rough spot if you're Deathlord, because not only is your Sea Giant gone, you're probably running another there, so you have that if you can draw into it, but you've got the Sea Giant gone. Leroy Jenkins as your other win condition is through, so now you're kind of in a rough spot. You can still flood the board, but it's going to be a really slow process, and something that Shaman is really good at, especially once they get that board control, is to throw down the Doomhammer. They've got all the overloads to get some extra damage into things, and so now you're kind of playing from behind for the rest of the game if you're Deathlord, and really hoping that Maverick kind of misplays on some damage so you can just whittle him away at that health total as much as possible.
Yeah, Maverick wishing he had held on one more turn for that Lightning Storm, but Deathlord able to bait it out a little bit before he was able to play the Tentacles. So used it on the slightly smaller board, and which left Deathlord really free to extend into here with the Tentacles. So I think that could be a huge play in this game, looking back on that moment. If Deathlord is able to pull it back, I think that was a big swing play for him, and using that Lightning Storm in that manner could have impacted the game quite a bit.
I agree. And so now some options for Deathlord. I wouldn't be surprised if you have to power overwhelm.
Yeah, I like this a lot.
Yeah, and take out, and decide to take out both of these minions, because the 4/4 and the 4/5, those are pretty big minions outside of the two which we actually see in hand of the Maverick in the Thing from Below, as well as the Flame Wreck Faceless. There really aren't any huge threats that Totem Shamans generally run, so you're okay with wasting your double PO. You also don't have Leroy available anymore as well, so you're not having to really worry about that. But now it's going to be very difficult because
this hurts.
This hurts. Your big burst is gone. Your big bodies are gone as well. You're gonna have a Dark Iron there to kind of help push through at least the taunt, but at the same time, it's you clear the taunt, but the 7/7 stays up. So you're in a rough spot, and you can have the Voidwalker to throw down. I wouldn't, obviously he's gonna have to throw this down to try to mitigate some damage, but
sure,
he's got to hope for a bad draw or nothing in the hand, because with that 3 health, it gets dealt with very easily by these Shamans. They've got a lot of different tools that can do that extra 2 damage. So rough spot here for Deathlord. Didn't have the presence that he needed early, and then losing out on that Hex to the Sea Giant, as well as losing that Leroy off the Soulfire, to really put him in a rough spot with these minions that Maverick has been able to throw down.
And for the Maverick side, he had that Crazed Alchemist, which is obviously still in hand, but he wasn't able to do anything to Maverick's board with it. So he could have flipped his Imp Gang boss if he wanted to. I like this as well with the Void Card. I think you were going to say something about that.
Yeah, no, so I like this decision because every piece of damage that Maverick is going to be able to throw out from the Shaman is going to do more than 1 health. So you might as well force a 3/1, and then if he doesn't draw into something, then he's forced to trade with that 7/7. And so that drops it down 3 life total. It helps him out so much more, and it's going to give him a little bit more tools to have onto something. Now he's going to be able to clear the 7/5. He's still going to be able to maintain some kind of board control. He's going to have to face the difficulty of this Thunder Bluff, but at the same time, he's still able to kill the 7 attack minion off the board. And when you're already at 11, he's been forced to tap the last 3-4 turns. So his life total is just ever so slowly getting lower and lower. And so when you can take out these big attack minions, it's really important for you and the tempo and the board control that you've already put yourself in.
There's the Doomhammer from Maverick. So Deathlord able to weather the mid-game storm from the Shaman, which is very impressive from him. I didn't think he was going to be able to get out of those. The Maverick was just dropping big drop after big drop, and somehow, some way, Deathlord was able to fight back and almost get complete board control here. It looks like he'll be able to I don't know if he'll be able to clear the board completely here, but it'll be very close. Oh yeah, he won't be able to clear it.
That's really clutch. The Voidwalker is super clutch because there has been one Rockbiter's been used, so you know there's still another Rockbiter in the deck. You also know you lose to a Lightning Blast, so now you can clear the board off. It's gonna be a little inefficient. You're going to lose something, but at the same time, he's gonna be able to keep that Darkshire on. It looks like he's actually gonna just maintain as many minions on board as possible. He's thinking about turning that Darkshire into the Healing Totem. I like this. You've already seen one Lightning Storm. You're not sure if he runs a second one. He's got an empty hand. You've kind of got protection from your face with that Voidwalker. So just keeping those minions on, that way you can use them to deal with the other totems that are going to decide to pop up, are going to be pretty clutch. So he's going to leave the spell totem up. There's really no reason for him not to. He dies to anything that he draws anyway. So it's kind of like a do or die, and he's going to have to push as much face damage as he can.
Yeah, he's got to try to get as close to setting up a lethal here. He can't quite set up lethal on board. It'll depend on what he draws, but he's trying to get as much pressure as he can and realize that it doesn't change the death clock on him regardless. Kind of a dead drop here from Maverick. That's not going to help him out. Survivability.
Not at all. So
that's nice,
that's really good. Yeah, that really helps because that really protects that flame. It really protects that Flame Wreath Faceless a whole lot. And this is the kind of struggle because you've got the Flame Imp, the dead card, essentially, because you can't throw it down or you're just dead to rights. And so now it's kind of like a do or die situation for him. And without drawing any taunt, that's going to be Deathlord going down here to the Maverick. And with that only leaves that Warrior. It only leaves that Rogue, should I say, that he lost in the first match for. So he's going to have 2 opportunities now to kind of change that up. And with going against the Warlock as well as the Warrior, it could go either way. He doesn't have a lot of options against this Warlock with the deck that we've seen him with that Rogue. But at the same time, it could work out. We all know what happens with Miracle Rogue, so there's definitely an option.
Yeah, for sure. And even if Maverick hadn't gotten a taunt there, it was still nice, but he would still have been 2 off lethal there, I believe. He only had 13 damage, so it wasn't a complete RNG fest on the totem roll there for survivability. That would have been really unfortunate for Deathlord if that had been the only thing that saved his opponent. So at least he won't have the saltiness of the totem RNG on his conscience.
And to make it even more unfortunate for Deathlord as well, is say Deathlord wins this match, Warrior versus Rogue. When you come back to the Warlock, because that game lasted as long as what it did, Maverick now has an extensive amount of knowledge of what cards Deathlord is running. So he knows that he's teched this Soulfire into it. So he's going to have a lot more options. It's going to make him easier to play around things. But the same could be said, I guess you could say, for the Rogue. Now, the Rogue lists are pretty standard. You can see some debates between the Shiv, Sinister Strike, as well as, how many conceals you run into things. But by and large, a lot of these Miracle decks are essentially the same. So it's still going to give Deathlord a little bit of a better place to decide what he has. And now, as we come into his second round of play on this Warrior, he's already finally starting off a little bit better, drawing that War Axe early and having that as an option. So he's just going to tech that up, put it into play, and kind of dissuade any of these 3 health minions that Maverick wants to throw down.
Yeah, definitely. I like that over the Armor Smith, I guess he could have played the Armor Smith instead and try to hide the War Axe, but I like setting it up here and just kind of, like you said, deterring the play right off the bat and able to throw out the Frothing Berserker on the next turn.
Yeah, especially because Maverick knows that this is kind of a more of like a tempo warrior deck. He wouldn't be surprised. He would generally be okay with throwing down a blank SI agent just to get some kind of tempo himself and have a minion on board. And so throwing down that Winax really helps him to deter that effort. And now it's going to force a kind of a difficult situation for Maverick. He can either choose. He actually almost thought about eviscerating, but instead he's going to be able to throw that pillager down. I really like the Tomb Pillager since they added it to the game, just because of the value that it creates, especially coining it out. Even if he takes this out, he still has the coin. That was resources wasted to be able to take out that 5/4 body, and it's just such a good card that they introduced to really help out a lot of these rogue decks in the earlier stages of the game and getting them a pretty solid body that kind of syncs as well with the Miracle deck and Gadgetzan Auctioneer.
Yeah, Maverick picked up a 3-drop, but not the one he was looking for. A SI7 would have been huge there. We're left for the backstab SI finally to clear off that frothing, but instead, as you mentioned last turn, he might have to eviscerate it here now.
I think he's going to have to. He really doesn't have any other options to come onto this. He does have an he did pop it up to 5 mana.
Yep.
So he can try to get a pretty big, pretty big, or not necessarily big, I'd say pretty solid Edwin there. He's actually debating on whether or not he wanted to prep. Doesn't end up doing it, but that's a really good 6/6 body. You just saw an execute, so
exactly my point. Yep.
The chances of him having another execute are going to be pretty slim. And now there's really no way that Deathlord can really clear this off onto things. He's going to have to be forced to throw down the Berserker just to force that 6/6 to run into him. That defeats, again, one of his big minions onto something. Now, he does have the late game potential with the Gromosh as well as the Varian that Maverick saw the last time this was played, but still, losing something big that you generally want to create a lot of value in that in that Berserker, being forced to throw that down, that's a huge resource wasted for Deller. So a great job by Maverick to throw down the option there with that. And the sap, it's just going to make it that much worse.
Yeah, and Deathlord even decided to trade into the Van Cleave to buff up the frothing and make the trade a little bit more awkward for Maverick, but sap's going to make quick work of that.
Huge.
And we notice he does have the Maverick has a lot better turns than the last time he played Rogue. Going into that Gadgetzan Auctioneer, he has Auctioneer, he has the backstab, he has the prep and the conceal. So all of that's going to let him cycle through his deck extremely quickly, and it could be very difficult for Deathlord to maintain that tempo after all those card draws. But he's got some big threats, so we'll have to see.
He does, and a good spot here now for Deathlord, as yes, it did get your Berserker did get sapped away, but at least you're able to throw it down. You're forced to take damage, but as you mentioned, now is a really tough spot if you're Deathlord, because the Gadgetzan came down, the prep came down as well. You're gonna have to hope for a good cycle, because if not, you're gonna be taking a lot of damage with that Wicked Knife, because if you backstab, I'm not sure. Yeah, I think it might have been a little bit of a misplay. He should have backstabbed first and then run onto the prep, but instead he's just going to decide to conceal. And now, again, a difficult spot because both preps are done. Or if you throw out the second prep to take the Fan of Knives and try to get some extra damage with that and a backstab, then you really can't do anything. So a little bit of a misstep there by Maverick. Hopefully Deathlord can capitalize, and he can, as he's going to have the Blood Hoof to soak up that Wicked Knife onto something. So a nice little swing for Deathlord, taking advantage of that preparation misstep that Maverick just had.
Yeah, maybe he was hoping to pick up an Eviscerate, so maybe it was just a little bit of a riskier play to pick up.
Yeah, that's a possibility.
Yeah, but then when he didn't draw it, it made it really awkward for him because he's like, do I prep backstab now? Because if I Fan of Knives this, which is the most efficient play, I can't backstab it because now I just put damage on it. So, yeah, as you point out, it made it quite awkward. Ooh, now another backstab. It doesn't really allow for a super clear.
No, it doesn't. And now, like, you're in an even more awkward spot because your Fan of Knives is going to your Fan of Knives is going to enrage that Blood Hoof. Now, a good little job by him, Maverick, to pump that Gadgetzan in first to try to get something done onto this. He's still going to be able to clear. He's trying to fish for some card draw, needs something it's not going to end up being enough. So he's going to take 5 damage here. He's going to have to trade into this 5-1, but that's 5 extra damage onto it. He's not going to be able to clear that Berserker. That Berserker's going to pump up to 9, and now it's really threatening the life totals of the Maverick. So this is kind of a clear example of how precious your plays and how methodical you really have to be with the rogue decks, because if you don't combo your cards correctly, then you can put yourself in a really difficult spot. And it's also a difficulty with the fact that it's Miracle, because like what you mentioned earlier of maybe he was hoping to try to get an Eviscerate. Well, if you don't draw it, then you're kind of in a really rough spot, because it's no matter how much you want to get something done, if you can't draw into it on that cycle, then you're in a pretty rough spot.
Sure, yeah, and he was getting all the right cards, the Maverick. He was cycling into the right cards, just not in the right order. So he had to, if he had all those cards at the beginning, he could have sequenced that, perfectly, I'm sure, and just done a complete board clear. It would have looked awesome. But in the order that they were drawn off of the auctioneer just made his turns super awkward.
Yeah. So now Maverick is in even more of a rough spot. He has to try to figure out some way to clear this board, but as it stands, I don't think he's really going to have too much of an ability to clear it. Again, trying to get cycle onto it, but now he throws down the Cold Blood and to try to get a one last ditch effort, and it's a rough spot, because I mean, what can you draw into at this point? You've already used both of your preps. You've already used pretty much everything at this point, so you're really struggling to get any kind of help in this game. And
with no mana, it's pretty difficult, and he's just gonna Sudoku it here.
And so that's gonna be the Warrior down, or the Warrior taking the win. So a really great job, and it looks like we're gonna end up going to the final game here. It's gonna be Rogue versus Warlock. Now, we've seen the deck lists pretty extensively from both of these, just with the play that we have, and now this is a rough spot, because ever since the changes to Blade Flurry, without any AoE ability to clear outside of the Fan of Knives, if the Warlock can get a pretty solid board and get actual more than 1 health minions and really swarm himself up, then that really puts a lot of pressure onto this Rogue. So it's gonna be really reliant on that early draw coming out of Maverick, and reliant on him getting those SI agents as well as those Tomb Pillagers out early to try to get some kind of control onto this Zoo deck.
Yeah, really sick starting hand from Deathlore. He has the Voidwalker, even has the coin. He decided to throw back a couple of the drops, but he could have kept those and just had a really phenomenal hand, even with those ones that he already had. But he cycled them out, and as you mentioned, though, Maverick, not a terrible hand either. He was able to pick up that Tomb Pillager you pointed out.
Yeah, he's got the Tomb Pillager. He can now as well throw down the Thaunos and clear off that Voidwalker with a backstab. So pretty lucky to try to get something done. He has kind of an awkward turn 3 play, so we're gonna have to hope for him to try to get some kind of 3-drop to kind of help himself out. But just as strong as a play here now, as the Imp Gang boss got drawn through. So that's going to be a turn 2 Imp Gang boss with the potential for another one to come down. And with the backstab gone as well, it's going to force a prep prep Eviscerate here from the Maverick. So again, what did we talk about? It's using those early resources is something that really helps out these decks early if it forces them to get it done. But as it stands, Deathlore in a pretty good spot as we come into turn 3. Gonna just throw down another Imp Gang boss and just really put the pressure here onto Maverick.
Yeah, you saw how awkward it was for Maverick to answer your first one, so why not answer it with another one? See how he deals with this one. He could have done it a little bit more efficiently, as you mentioned, with the prep, but he really values that prep in this matchup. So he didn't care about your opponent getting 1/1s, maybe because of the Fan of Knives like he just picked up. He was banking on getting that, which would have answered him regardless. So he decided to clear it and was able to do so by keeping the prep. Just gave your opponent a couple more 1/1s, but obviously not a big deal to the Maverick at this point. We'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, so it was the Tomb Villager to come down. It's a great turn 4 play. You know, it's something we've already mentioned and talked about before, but it was answered immediately with the Dark Iron Dwarf. So again, the board control shifting now into the favor of Deathlore, and there's really no real way for Maverick to kind of deal with this. He's just forced to throw down the 5-drop Azure Drake just to get a body on the board, but we know it's going to get answered almost immediately. He's got the Peddler to get something done. Is going to end up picking up the Soulfire. Yeah, I mean, at this point, you're just perfectly fine with the extra burst because you have so many different tools to flood the board. You've already got a great amount of power already, especially since you threw down the Alpha. So you're okay with discarding a card because you've got 4 minions on board. You know that there's no effective way for this rogue to deal with it. So you've got, what is it that he's got right now? He's got 12 attack on the board, and again, threatening those life totals of the Maverick and just really putting him in a rough spot.
Yeah, huge for the Maverick. He doesn't, I guess he does know it because he saw it now, but that Soulfire, really not liking Leroy Jenkins, discards it again. And he would have had lethal Deathlore, assuming that Maverick couldn't clear any minions, which is a small assumption. But as you mentioned, he had 12 attack on board. Leroy would have been 6 more, or actually 7 more, because if he'd done it properly, which I'm sure he would have, and put it next to the Direwolf Alpha, he would have had 19 damage with the burst, and the Maverick's only at 18. So if he doesn't discard that Leroy Jenkins, we may be looking at lethal next turn from Deathlore. That could be a factor later on.
It could indeed, but now without any effective way to clear, he threw down the Phantom Knives. He's gonna have to end up forcing both of them just to clear the Alpha as well as the Peddler and a couple of those imps. So he's forcing himself to try to get some kind of clear, but he doesn't get any board off of it. And now you've got 7 attack on the board. You're still at full health of your Deathlore, so he's perfectly fine with throwing the life tap. And now I wouldn't be surprised if he actually throws down the Forbidden Ritual, because you've already seen both Phantom Knives. You know There isn't any other form of clear, so you can just throw down. You can get the four extra bodies on the board. You can push face for damage, and then anything that Maverick throws down, he's going to have an immediate response for, because even though he has the full board, he's still going to be able to have those 1/1s to whittle away at those 3/3, the 4/4 bodies of the Maverick that this rogue is going to be able to have. And you're just in a clear spot. This is great early decision making by Deathlore, and just a capitalization of this unfortunate draw that this rogue player has had thus far.
Yeah, knowing that rogues do not generally run Blade Flurry anymore, that's pretty much been officially cycled out of the meta right now. It's pretty safe to say that the rogue would not have any more AoE, having seen both Phantom Knives, as you pointed out. So it felt really safe extending onto the board with those tentacles, just keeping the board control here. He didn't... does he have lethal here? Actually, he had 2, 4, 6, 8. I guess he just had 10. Well, he threw 1 in, so he might have had lethal there. I'm not sure if I might have miscalculated it.
I think he was 1 off. I think he had 10.
Okay.
I think he had 10, and
because of board space, probably.
Yeah, board space. He needed the one extra board, so he was forced to trade in to be able to get that extra on board. So still, he's in a great spot. He's got the Direwolf down, so he can just trade in the 2 tentacles off on to kill the Azure Drake. There is no AoE available, so he's perfectly fine with kind of overcommitting onto this board. And I wouldn't even say it's an overcommit, because you know that you don't have any clear.
Yeah, definitely.
It's more now of just he's perfectly fine with flooding it through. Gonna throw down the Darkshire as another potential win condition to have it. And with 5 health left and no real options, it looks like that's gonna be game here. The Maverick going down to the rogue. That's 3 matches that he lost onto it. Very unfortunate for him. But you have to credit a lot at what Deathlore has been able to do. You saw how well he was able to drag out that shaman game with the decision making that he has, and this kind of just speaks to a lot of Deathlore's strengths throughout a lot of this, because you can essentially say that he got some great draw on that Druid in one of the games, but the way that he was able to play the Warrior match as well as both of these Warlock matches here, really good sense of momentum and a huge swing of motivation that he's got going in his favor coming into the finals.
Yeah, he's fighting it out here. He realized, if I clear this, I'm technically not dead on board. So unfortunately, this abusive sergeant's going to have something to say about that, and that, as you point out, that will be lethal for Deathlore.
So stalling out the unfortunate inevitable
Power
and the power
overwhelming,
overwhelming to throw it due. So will we see the BM? Nope, he's just gonna play it standard, keep himself hidden, keep himself in good light, coming into the finals. So yeah, that's gonna be Deathlore pulling himself off the 3-2 victory. That Warlock coming off and picking up that win. So again, a really good setup by him. A lot of the decks that all three of the decks that he were playing with that Druid Warlock as well as the Warrior relied a lot on the decision making that he made in kind of the mid game, as we say, of all of these matches. And it was because of that decision making and the accurate calculations that he was able to pull himself up and overcame a lot of adversity, because the mage difficulties that he had, he pulled through, picked up a win off of that, as well as really outplaying a lot of that that totem shaman. And so now Deathlore, again, having a huge swing of momentum, and especially when you're in a game like Hearthstone, having that confidence coming into the finals, definitely going to be something that plays into his favor.
Okay, well, that'll do it for the first semifinals match of Elephino Open number 24. We just saw Deathlore take a 3-2 victory over the Maverick. So the next match coming up will be between Pro Caleb and Cito. So Jump and I are going to take a short break while we set that match up for you, but we will be right back with that next match. So stick around, you don't want to miss it. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Elephino Open number 24. I am still Elephino, and I am still joined by my good friend Jump. How are you enjoying yourself so far, casting?
I'm really enjoying myself, actually. It's very different than some of the things that we've done in the past, but at the same time, it's definitely an experience, and kind of getting to watch these players' decision makings while having both of the players' views kind of in your head. It really gives you an extra perspective, as well as an added appreciation for their ability, because they're playing around certain cards that they have no necessary idea whether or not they're in their hand. But just seeing them play it out with the way that they're going about their plays really, really speaks to the skill level that we're seeing here in the Elephino Open.
Yeah, definitely. Sometimes you watch these players and you know that you can see the other players' cards, and it almost feels like the way they're playing that they can, almost see them as well. It's just pretty crazy the way that some players can analyze what their opponent has or doesn't have based off of what they played. And it's really easy for us to make the right to see what could be a better decision potentially based off the other player's hands. But it's almost like, in poker, anybody can play poker watching it on TV. You can see, obviously go all in. You got them beat easily. But it's a little bit different.
Double aces, it's fine. Waste that $2 million pot that you've got.
Sure. Yeah, it'll be fine. Yeah, I get frustrated on ladder when I can't see the opponent's cards. I think it's bugged. What's going on? But
that's fun.
Yeah, no, definitely pretty fun. So anyway, we're going to be showing the second semifinals match of Elephino Open number 24. And it's going to be between Pro Caleb and Cito. So the winner of this match will go on to face Deathlore in the championship match. So, Jump, you want to give us a rundown of their lineups?
Yep. So we've got Pro Caleb. He is going to be playing the Druid, the Warlock, as well as the Warrior. His Shaman was banned away. So the exact same setup, actually, that Deathlore ran. And now Cito is going to be playing Rogue, Shaman, Warlock, and it was his Warrior that was actually banned away. So nothing too different. But again, something that we kind of highlighted before the first set was that there are a lot of different options that they can bring. We've seen both the control as well as the aggro, and it seems that in the last match it was a lot more of tempo. That was something that both of those players really wanted to have. That you saw the tempo mage, you saw the tempo warrior, as well as that beast druid and Zeus. So kind of a potential foreshadowing to moving forward and seeing what we're going to see from both of these players.
Yeah, definitely. We are into game number 1 right now. Pro Caleb on the top of your screen opening up with Warrior, and Cito on the bottom of your screen opening up with Warlock. We saw Zoo last match, as you pointed out, but this Warlock definitely appears to be more of a handlock Reno situation. And Pro Caleb looks like he's running the Maybe the pirate warrior that's gaining popularity.
Oh, please make me happy. That is going to be the Pirate Dragon Warrior. It's a little bit of a little bit of a variation because we do see the Mortal Strike in there. That's kind of been something that players have been back and forth on which to have. And this is going to be a very interesting matchup, and it's going to be extremely reliant on Pro Caleb's draw because with this Pirate Dragon Warrior, a lot of it comes down to obviously the tempo that you can create in the earlier stages, especially with the Hungry Dragons and whatnot with all of your weapons and pirates. But if you're not able to get that win condition out early and you use a lot of that front load damage that you have, you get countered immediately by that Reno Jackson. And if you're not able to effectively create those minions, it really puts you in a difficult spot because something that Reno locks have a huge amount of is clear. They've got the Demon Wrath, they've got the they've got the Hellfires as well as Reno Jackson and plenty of other options at their disposal to really clear the board. So it's going to be up to Caleb to really create as much tempo and as much control and pressure early to kind of like stop Cito in his tracks and kind of force him to that play.
Yeah, we can see that's really important for Cito. He already has that Reno Jackson in hand. We can tell he kept it off of the mulligan, so that's going to be huge for him. I believe he kept it off the mulligan. I could be mistaken. But regardless, he's got it in hand now. And having that at his disposal, now that he knows he's facing more of the aggressive warrior type, as generally the Fairy Dragon is not Randy Control Warrior. So that should have been a tell to Cito, and I'm sure it was. Again, these are all very high skill level players. So seeing that right off the bat, I'm sure he knew exactly what he was up against, and now he knows he's going to have to take a slightly more defensive line and maybe use some removal in ways that he wouldn't against Control Warrior or a slower type of deck.
Yeah, and he's kind of in a difficult spot right now as well because he couldn't really go for the Demon Wrath because that was just going to do nothing but bust up the Frothing Berserker, and so he's forcing himself to wait. I wouldn't be surprised here if he decided to just get himself to wait long enough to throw out that Stampeding Kodo. He has to hope that that the Mage hero power doesn't get done up by this Finley here. So it's ended up going to be just the reinforced to try to get a little bit of extra board. And now is where that pressure that this Pirate Dragon Warrior can really start to have on, because this forces a difficult decision for Cito, because now you kind of have to think, okay, what do we have to do in this point? Do I go for clear? Well, you can't, because there's nothing that you can have that can do that 4 damage to kill off that Frothing Berserker with only 4 mana. So you kind of have to think, all right, which direction are we going to go? You could coin out the Stampeding Kodo, but you've got essentially a 25% chance of actually killing that Berserker. So you've kind of got to decide, 6 in one and half a dozen in another, which direction am I going to go? And he's floating towards the Demon Wrath right now, but with 5 extra attack that's going to be added onto that Berserker, that's 7 damage that you're going to be taking to your face next turn.
Huge.
So you're struggling.
Yeah, he held on to it last turn. Obviously, he could have played the Demon Wrath, but he didn't because it would have killed off the Fairy Dragon, but would have buffed up the Frothing Berserker, so he couldn't kill it by the Stampeding Kodo. So as you pointed out, he was hoping to coin out that Stampeding Kodo here and knock off the Frothing Berserker, and then have the Stampeding Kodo on board to take care of the Fairy Dragon in a future turn. But unfortunately, Pro Caleb was able to fight around that with some 1-attack minions, which made the Stampeding Kodo very awkward to play. And got a nice pickup though with this Twilight Drake. That was huge.
Yeah, he's gonna have that. He's gonna have that Twilight Drake just with that body. But look at the damage and just look at the power that you have in Pro Caleb's hands right now. Because if he wants to get a taunt off, he can actually get rid of this Rusty Hook and throw down the Fiery War Axe, and then go for the Dread Corsair after that. He'll have enough mana to do so, and then he can honestly just push face with this. So we've seen a lot of smorking come from these Pirate Warriors because they just push as much damage as they can, and they really don't care. But it looks like, just as I say that, it looks like it's going to happen because he's just buffing up this Frothing Berserker. He knows that there's no removal in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 cards that Cito has in his deck. So he is perfectly content with throwing off as much damage as he has. So he's just going to buff up that Frothing Berserker, queue up that War Axe, throw down that Dread Corsair, have that taunt in place so that there's no way that Frothing Berserker can die, and essentially almost sealing the deal here, because this is going to be a very difficult. Now, you can Demon Wrath Mortal Coil to get rid of the Dread Corsair, to kick off and be able to kill that Frothing Berserker, but now you're left still with 7 health. There are 2 cards. They end up having to be Mortal Strikes, so that's going to be actually lethal in his hand. So without a taunt, Cito's going to go down very quickly to this deck. And I told you I wanted to see it, and these are the reasons why.
Yeah, definitely. I think he's pretty much has to Reno here. I don't see a great way out of it if he doesn't Reno here, but that's still a lot of power on the board, even if he does. So this is a great situation if you're pro Caleb. He was able to put those minions on the board, put your opponent in a situation where they have to Reno to survive, and if they do, then you've got enough pressure on the board that it pretty much nullifies the Reno anyway, so it makes it just extremely awkward for the Warlock player here.
And this is the difficult spot that you're in as well if you're Cito in this Warlock, because your huge amount of heal is gone now. So the only way you can heal yourself back up is if you have, you can use Bran with the Farseer, use the Refreshment Vendor to try to get something down. But you already know that that's not in his hand. You're pretty sure that's not in his hand because he did end up having to force. He ended up having to coin out the Reno. So you know that kind of sense of heal is not there. So you're in a very good spot if you're pro Caleb. Now you do know 100% that this Frothing Berserker is going to be going for the face. Now it's kind of the decision of, do we push for the damage or do we clear off onto this Reno Jackson? And it looks like he's going to end up using that Mortal Strike to, as well as the Wind Axe, to just kill it off and get some extra damage. Oh no, actually he's going to end up using the Fairy Dragon. So he wants to hold on to that weapon to maybe push through a taunt or something if Cito decides to throw it down. And with Cito already back down to 14 health and lethal on board, you've got to be scared if you're this Warlock player.
Yeah, I think he's going to have to try to be the Dark Peddler and hope for Soulfire here. I see that as like his only. He does have the taunt, so he could taunt up the Defender, but actually that wouldn't do it. If he plays the Dark Peddler and taunts it up, that War Axe would swing right through that and allow the Frothing to swing for the fences. So he's going to have to go Dark Peddler here, but if he does, he doesn't have another way out. But I don't think he has another way out regardless.
I mean, he can throw down the Mortal Coil. He can Mortal Coil the Silverhand Recruit to potentially get something else in. But I mean, you have to think about, okay, what other options does he have in his deck? We've seen a little bit here and there. Okay, so you do have the tournament attendee, but it's you're going to throw that down. You're going to have, you could potentially Mortal Coil, but I mean, what else do you have in your deck for 3 mana that you can try to get a clear off of? I mean, there's Shadow Bolt as an option. It doesn't look like it's actually going to be it, and that's going to be game. Very fast pickup there for Pro Caleb, and that's that tempo that we were talking about, that this Pirate Dragon deck can really turn up. It really wasn't reliant on what you're generally used to seeing, but with that 4 health available on that Frothing Berserker, it just put him in a very difficult spot, was able to push through the damage as well as the Reno, and there you go. Caleb going up 1-0, taking that Warlock deck down.
Yeah, I think the only way that Cito could have fought back in that game was if he had drawn into a Shadow Flame when he had the Twilight Drake on board to clear off that large board of minions to include that Frothing Berserker that just got completely out of control and went unanswered the entire game. But not having that was just extremely unfortunate for him, and just meant that he was able to snowball the game with the Warrior.
Yeah. There was the Shadow Bolt as well. We've seen some of them run Shadow Bolt, the 3 mana 4 damage spell. That's something that you see teched in sometimes just for some early clear like that, especially considering that if you're going against a lot of these Warlock decks, it deals with the Imp Gang boss as well as some of these other 4 healths pretty well. But now we're going to see the mirror matchup. It looks like Cito's going to go right back to that Reno lock, hopefully having some better luck. But as it stands, he doesn't really have much for that early board. He's going to have to wait till turn 3 unless he can get some good draw. But a very good start here for Pro Caleb. As you can see, he's got a decent amount of minions to put out on the board. Could decide to coin out 2 1-drop minions here to try to just get some extra pressure and hope for the best against Cito.
Yeah, I like it. You know what you're up against in the Reno Warlock, so I think just getting a lot of pressure here with the double flame emblem is just too good to pass up.
Yeah. There's because it's not subset. The only thing that can end up killing these off of it is going to be that Hellfire, because the Demon Wrath does essentially nothing against it. They are demons, so gonna make it really easy. And Cito forced to tap away and already in a rough spot. Now he does have a decent turn 3 play with the Imp King boss. I mean, that's essentially the best you can hope for in these situations. But still, with 2/3/2 minions up on that, that's going to be a lot of pressure that Pro Caleb is going to be putting down already. And now, just already on the back foot here, Cito not looking good so far against Pro Caleb.
Yeah, like a triple possessed villagers. Those are extremely sticky, and we might see all three of those coming down. But he looks like he might go with the Imp King boss here instead. But those would have been extremely resilient to things like that Hellfire and Demon Wrath that you mentioned just a little bit ago.
Yeah, I like the decision to go with the Imp Gang boss. It keeps things simpler, because if the mind control tech goes down, it's going to make it better. And if you do end up throwing the Hellfire, you still have a 2/1 minion up, as well as the Imp that was spawned off of that. So it kind of helps yourself a little bit more, and can help deal with whatever you throw onto the board. But the mind control tech is going to go down. It is going to steal away that Flame Imp. And so now a little bit of extra board swing into favor of Cito. Not playing Zoo, but looking full Zoo with what the minions he has on, what he has on board. And this is really good for Cito, because the longer that he can stall this game out, and the easier that he has of it, or the easier of an opportunity he has to keep that board control, it allows him to scale up towards the later turns when he has a little bit more mana and can start throwing those bigger force, those bigger threat minions down, and really help himself up. Because by and large, the Reno Lock is going to win the war of attrition, because they have so many tools and so many so many tools of clear to really help them get to that late game situation. The longer that this plays out, the better it's going to play into Cito's favor. So if he can keep stalling himself out, things are good. But as we say that, those possessed villagers are going to come down and really put this board in Pro Caleb's favor.
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure. The Stampeding Kodo has an option here, but a Refreshment Vendor being picked up off the top might just be the slightly better option, because Stampeding Kodo is really only going to clear off, obviously, only one of those minions. And if it clears off one of the villagers, did it really do anything? You know, not really. So I really like the Mortal Coil combined with the Refreshment Vendor here. Obviously, Mortal Coil first and see what you get, but having that Refreshment Vendor to back it up with is really comforting for Cito, I would think.
Yeah, and it's also got the 5 health as well, so it's a lot stickier. And especially considering that Zoo runs these 1-2 attack minions, it makes it a lot better for you. And if Pro Caleb is that worried about it, maybe he uses a Power Overwhelming. Doubtful, but it's still an option for him to go through. So having that 3/5 minion on board really helps him a whole lot. And as it stands now, again, a little bit of extra swing going into Cito's favor, and this is largely in due because he got very lucky with that mind control tech, because he got the 3/2 instead of the 1/1. It forced some extra removal tools coming out of Pro Caleb. But now we're kind of in a rough spot here if you're Pro Caleb, because you've got a lot of decisions that you can make. You do have the Dark Iron Dwarf that you can throw down and use all 3 minions to clear off onto that Refreshment Vendor. And you're still left with a 4/4 as well as 2 1/1s. So you can have that down, or you can try to swarm the board a little bit more. You've got the Knife Juggler, as well as another Possessed Villager, even the Forbidden Ritual if you want to do so. But you have to be careful, because you're extremely susceptible to a lot of that clear that these Reno Locks run. So it looks like he's just going to go with the safer play here. Going to just try to clear out. He's actually going to have a little bit more of that effective trading himself and leave up the Refreshment Vendor, give himself a little bit better board, and kind of push the issue onto Cito.
Yeah, it had the same amount of attack as the mind control tech, so I like this play as well from Pro Caleb. It sets up the trades to be a little bit nicer next turn now with the Dark Iron Dwarf. Feels like you can clean up the Refreshment Vendor a little bit nicer next turn.
Yeah, but a good little response here by Cito. Gonna get some health up using that Brand Farseer combo. Gonna give him some decent board with the healthier minions, as well as a 6 heal. So in a much better spot, Cito, this time around with that Reno Lock. than the last one. It's kind of a struggle, that you find yourself in with this matchup, because if Pro Caleb doesn't get essentially perfect draw in the earlier stages, which he did for the large part, then it kind of puts him in a rough spot, because Cito, again, is able to clear himself up. He's able to allow this game to drag out longer. And once he has more mana at his disposal, then there's essentially nothing much that Pro Caleb can do. So Pro Caleb is on essentially a time window. He has to keep trying to push damage. He has to keep trying to keep that tempo up, because if not, something that you've mentioned in the last series of these Zulocks kind of fizzle out against these later, much bigger minions that these Reno locks and some of these later game decks can really crank out.
Yeah, they're meant to survive through the early game and the mid game. So you set up your small minions at the beginning, go face or trade if you have to, but you obviously want to go face preferably. And then even transition into the mid game, you want to use your buff spells like Power Overwhelming, Dark Iron Dwarf, Abusive Sergeant, cards like that, to take the advantage and clear off some larger minions and establish a minion of your own. But at some point, that's just not going to cut it if you allow it to go super late. They're just not going to be able to clear off an 8/8 super effectively without trading in usually their entire board to deal with it if it comes to that.
Yeah, and so Pro Caleb kind of taking the initiative, put a lot of extra power on the board. Now, he did overcommit if there is a Hellfire in the hand of Cito, and Cito recognizes this. He knows that this is exactly the struggle that he's facing himself into, and so he doesn't have the Hellfire, so he's not going to be able to clear. That is what is it? He's now at 8 damage on board. He does have the Alpha Wolf Dire. Does he have lethal here? He's got 8.
He's 2 off, I believe.
Yeah, he's got 8, 10, 8, 10, 14. Yeah, so he's 2 off of lethal. Now,
you can tap into it, though, for sure. Oh, there it is.
Oh, there it is. Yep, that's going to be lethal. And, wow, huge swing of events there. The juggle is going to come through, wow. But, oh, my gosh. So, we talked so much about how Cito made as many of the right moves as possible, doing a really good job at stopping the clear or stopping the damage and stopping that tempo that Caleb really created. But some good draws, and that Soulfire, again, being put into into these Zulocks, working out in favor for these Warlock players. Pro Caleb going to go up another game now. That's 2 losses for the Reno Lock. So do you go for a third attempt, or you kind of hope that you can switch up your luck? You're going against Druid, so you've got the Rogue and the Shaman as other options now. Which one do you go for if you're Cito in this instance?
Well, it depends. I think in this matchup, you go when you're down to your opponent only having 1 deck and you still have all 3 of yours. In my opinion, I would just play whatever I feel the most comfortable with. Whatever's my, everybody has their go-to deck. Whatever you feel the most confident with, throw that out there. See if you can win a game with that. What you're most comfortable with, kind of build that confidence back up for yourself, and try to help that propel you into a reverse sweep. But if you throw out, I'm not really sure about this class, but I'll throw it out there because I have to get a win with it. I think that's not always the best situation, because while it is true, you are going to have to win with that. I think momentum is very real and confidence is very real in Hearthstone, and trying to get that back when you've dropped the first 2 games can be very detrimental to your performance.
Yep, but third time is the charm. That's what Cito is saying. He's going to say, you know what? Damn you, I'm going to get the win on this Reno Lock. So,
well, maybe this is what he's most comfortable with.
You're right. That is quite a possibility. We saw some good plays out of him in the last set. So it could be his comfort choice. And now here, Caleb, 1 win away from going into the finals, and going with it looks like going to be that Beast Druid, and already having a good start. Something that Caleb has had throughout this entire series, Living Roots. So he's going to have some extra presence there with those saplings. And now is crunch time if you're Cito. So think long, think hard, because you're really on the back foot here.
Yeah, and with going down 2-0 in Conquest is, yeah, you're obviously behind, and it's not where you want to be. However, in Conquest, a lot of times you've built your lineup to target a specific deck. So if your opponent hasn't played the deck that you're targeting yet, and you drop the 2 games to the classes that you expect to lose to anyway, then it's really not a big deal because you're like, okay, yeah, I lost both of those first two, but all of my 3 decks are designed to beat, Druid, hopefully for Cedo in this case. And he can feel confident that he still has his decks designed to beat that one. He knows he has the potential to 3-0 that Druid, so it may look like he's farther behind, but if your deck's designed to target one, you may not actually be that far behind. Is what I'm
Agreed.
trying to say here.
Agreed. Flipping it around though to kind of like take another perspective look on it is, while there are a lot of options and kind of like you said, a lot of tools for Cedo to kind of take out this Druid, Pro Caleb has 3 tries basically. He's got a 2-win insurance.
Valid point.
If it doesn't work out this time around and he does fall to the Reno lock, he still has the option to defeat the Rogue and to defeat the Shaman. So it could work out in his favor that way, because you have the opportunity to try again if need be. However, to kind of throw it back into what you were saying, to Cedo's advantage of it, even if Cedo does win against this deck, he's gonna have, each game that he plays is gonna be more and more knowledge of what the deck list is for Pro Caleb. So he's gonna be able to play more effectively with each win that he's able to have. So if he's able to win this out, then I agree exactly with what you're saying. There is a big opportunity for him to actually be able to do it around with the reverse sweep. So we're gonna have to wait and see. But as it stands now, coming into turn 5 here for Cedo, board control is immediately in Pro Caleb's favor, and I really like these beast druids coming in with this Stranglethorn Tiger and really teching this into it, especially against something like these Reno locks, because there really isn't any 5 damage clear unless you have that Shadow Flame, which at turn 5 you're not going to be able to have a minion of high enough health really, unless you use that Power Overwhelming to really get off a solid Shadow Flame. So it's a really solid body. It has the stealth, and you're guaranteed that 5 damage or that 5 clear once you actually come through and get things done.
Yeah, definitely. Excellent point there. We'll see what he decides to pick up off of the Raven Idol. Swipe not super great. If it was Zoo, obviously he'd probably pick up that swipe, but maybe Nourish to help him transition, although it is turn 5. So I don't know how much those mana crystals are going to value it. So we'll see. Very difficult decision for him. Not probably exactly what he was looking for here.
Yeah, he's kind of, so you can wisp, but no, I'm just kidding. You don't wisp. I actually did see the other day on ladder what's the there's the Death Rattle card that they added in Wisp of the Old Gods, where it's the 2/2, but when it dies, all of your minions get an extra, get an extra 1/1 added into it. He somehow got the wisps into his hand, threw that down, and then killed, and then he had 3/3 wisps all across the board. So it was a kind of an interesting little interaction there for that. But now, as we're here coming into the next set, this Violet Teacher has been doing some work, as he's been able to have a lot of pressure onto Cedo, and Cedo now, and again, a rough spot. He doesn't have any AoE clear. That's been kind of the bane of his struggles. He used that early Demon Wrath to clear the 2/1 and the 2/1/1s very early. So that kind of, with Pro Caleb kind of baiting that out, it's put him in a much more advantageous position, because he's just kind of struggling with the clear onto this now, as he's having. He's gonna end up trying to coin out the Siphon Soul, I guess. You Siphon Soul the Tiger to have it through, but it's gonna be a very, very rough spot for him, because that's essentially one of the only cards outside of that BGH to be able to deal with this Ragnaros Caleb has in his hand. So a very solid spot, and like you said, he's got essentially a 3-try setup, but hey, if you can just take it out on the first win, Pro Caleb's gonna be happy with that. So really solid spot for Pro Caleb to be into as we're coming in.
Yeah, this is going to be a lot of threats from Pro Caleb. Now Cedo's going to have to. I don't know how he deals with that rag. I'm not seeing an option.
The only option you have is
you're abusive, I guess.
I mean, yeah, you could do abusive something to get into the Shadow Flame, but it doesn't matter. And by God, that was a very fast win there for Pro Caleb, and 3-0, so a lot faster than what we had with that last semifinals match. Pro Caleb going to take down Cedo, and You kind of have to wonder, is the Warlock the best setup in that situation? I think that yes, it's Reno Lock, but you've got a pretty good idea that it's Beast Druid. I mean, you do still have Ramp Druids popping up, but by and large, the Beast Druid is kind of the end all be all for the Druids when these players do bring them into their sets. And I'm just not sure that the Reno Lock was I guess equipped to deal with it as much, because the Reno Lock, because you have one of each card, you're very reliant on exquisite drawing. And that's just not something that Cito was unfortunately able to have up. I would almost say go for the Shaman in that instance. Have a little bit more board presence. Guaranteed board presence with the totems and whatnot. We're assuming he's running the mid-range totem Shaman. So all in all, it's going to be a difficult setup. But still, you have to give a lot of credit where credit is due, because Pro Caleb pulled out 3 very solid wins, and now he's going to be facing Deathalore here in the finals.
Yeah, so as you just pointed out, he's going to move on. And the championship match of Elephino Open number 24 will be coming up next between Deathalore and Pro Caleb. So Jump and I are going to take a short little break while we set that up for you guys.
We're going to twerk a break. We're going to
twerk a break real quick.
I come on the casting desk, and the first thing you have to
oh, man, you got to call me out on that?
Yeah, at least you warmed me up over the hearth first.
Okay. But anyway, we'll be right back with that championship match of Elephino Open number 24. Stick around. You don't want to miss it. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Elephino Open number 24. I am Elephino. I am still joined by my good friend Jump. Thanks for sticking around. I hope you've had a lot of fun and are getting ready to go into the championship match here.
The only thing I wanted this entire day was to see that warrior deck, and now that I get to see it at least another time, the entire night is worth it for me. But no, I think that a lot of these, or both of these players, have really shown their ability to succeed. You have Pro Caleb, who won very convincingly in the semifinal match, winning 3-0, and then Deathalore, who was able to kind of weather the storm in the semifinals and use that decision making to kind of pull themselves out. And now, as we get into the finals match, and they're running kind of very similar decks, we kind of really get to see the power level of these players and the decision making that they can have to try to pull out a win.
Yeah. So in case you're just joining us this evening, this is a 256 player single elimination tournament. All matches are best of 5 conquest with a ban. So we've played through all the matches up into the championship match. So let me flip over to the bracket here real quick. You can kind of see our top 8 and our semifinalists. So the first match we showed was the Maverick and Deathalore. Deathalore took a 3-2 victory, moving him into the championship. And then the other semifinals match was Pro Caleb taking a 3-0 victory over Cito, putting him in the championship match. So now coming up here very shortly, we got Deathalore and Pro Caleb going head-to-head in the epic Elephino Open number 24 championship. If you're looking to get involved in some of these open Hearthstone tournaments and the tournament scene and try to qualify for the Americas preliminaries for the summer, definitely check out strivewire.com. They've got tournaments for the Americas region, which this one is. They also have tournaments for the European region. So definitely check out strivewire.com and get involved in the open Hearthstone tournament scene. Get a couple points, have a lot of fun, make some friends, and maybe we'll see you at BlizzCon. So that'd be really fun to see. So as you can see, the prizes on the left side of your screen, 3rd and 4th place each get 1 point in the Hearthstone Championship Tour standings. Second place gets 2 points, and first place gets 3 points. So just to kind of give you an idea of what those points mean is, if you hit, just by hitting legend for an entire month of ladder, you get 1 point if you don't finish in the top 100 legend. So that's the equivalent to finishing 3rd or 4th place in one of these open tournaments such as this one. So just in one day, you can get 3 points, which could be huge in the Hearthstone standings. I believe for the America's spring preliminaries, you only had to get 10 points to qualify for that tournament. So if you win one of these things, that's essentially a third of your points, and you're well on your way to qualifying for the summer prelims. So Anyway, enough of that. If you're interested, check out strivewire.com and obviously Blizzard if you want more information on open tournaments and the qualifiers and such things such as that. So, anyway, let's go ahead and get started with the championship match. Jump, would you mind doing a rundown of their lineups for us?
Yep, so we're going to have Deathlore. Deathlore was our first semifinal victor, our first finalist. He is going to be running that Beast Druid. He's going to be running the Unknown Shaman deck. We haven't seen it played yet, so we're not sure which one it is, whether it's the Totem Shaman that we've seen, or if it's going to actually be the aggro Shaman. We've got the Temple Warrior as well, so... oh, actually, no. Was it the Warlock that was? Yeah, and then the Warlock was banned. Okay, my notes got a little messed up on that one. And then we've got
Warlock
Pro Caleb
from both. Yep.
Yeah, the Pro Caleb, the other finalist. He's going to be running that Beast Druid, as well as his Shaman, that Pirate Dragon Warrior that I've been very enthusiastic about, and his Warlock is banned. So three of the same deck. So it's going to be we're going to see a mirror match at some point. But the big difference for me is that warrior. You've got the Tempo Warrior versus that Pirate Dragon Warrior. And the Pirate Dragon is a tempo deck of sorts, but it still does have those bigger bodies. You've got the Hungry Dragon. You've got the Corruptor as well. So it's a little bit of a different style, but something that we've seen Deathlore shine in. He had a little bit of a more difficult road. He ended up going 3-2 in the semifinal match. Is his decision-making and his calculations and a little bit of the risks that he took really played out in his favor. So I want to see what he's able to do now against this kind of oppressive lineup that we see coming out of Pro Caleb.
Yeah, you mentioned the mirror match, and here we go in game number 1 of the championship match. We've got Deathlore on the top of your screen opening up with Shaman, and Pro Caleb on the bottom of your screen also going with the Shaman here right off the bat. So both favoring that start. They look like look very similar as well. Similar lineups.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see what Pro Caleb is able to do, because he essentially he got some very solid starts in the last setup. He faced a little adversity, but by and large it wasn't anything too crazy. But Deathlore is known, or at least from what we've been able to see, to get out of these sticky situations pretty handily. So now it's going to be kind of a test of which one is able to come up on top, especially with this with these shamans, with the shaman mirror matchup. A lot of this is reliant on when you choose to overload, because both of these decks are heavily reliant on that overload factor, especially with the introduction of Tunnel Trog in the Old Gods expansion. Choosing when and when not to overload is a very big decision. It's going to be a very big momentum swing for both of these players, depending on which one ends up coming out on top.
This is a huge start right here. Deathlore able to bait out the rock biter and force the trade from so Pro Caleb deciding to clear as opposed to go on the aggressive here gives Deathlore a lot of the initiative on board thanks to that Argent Squire, especially with the Divine Shield. So I think he's in a commanding position early on.
Yeah, in this matchup, because this matchup is so reliant on board control, I wouldn't be surprised to see a lot of these players go for these more effective trades as opposed to just pushing in for damage, because they're essentially running much of the same deck. There might be a couple card differences here and there, but by and large, they're running the same thing. And so a lot of their win condition relies on having that board control and making sure to efficiently use their resources or use them as efficiently as possible, because that's the only way that they're going to come out on top. Because if one of the members uses too many resources to clear a minion or doesn't use enough resources to try to conserve, then things can really get out of whack very quickly, because something that Shaman as a class is very good at is getting a lot of that board presence and getting a lot of that control. So fighting for that board control is going to be on the forefront of both of these players' minds throughout the entirety of this match.
Yeah, you brought up a good point with the overload. They're able to take advantage of that overload to put larger minions than you should be able to on that turn, and then try to use that to snowball you through the rest of the match. Like 3 mana, 2 3/3s, or sorry, 2 2/3s with taunt is just obviously very cheap, but that's because of the overload mechanic, and they're being able to take advantage of that here.
Yeah, and we're starting to see kind of the first steps of what happens when you're unable to trade as efficiently as you would hope for, because Pro Caleb was forced to use that Rock Biter and actually using it on the Totem Golem to clear off, that allowed that effective trade with the Argent Squire. And so he was able to throw down his own other second Totem Golem. He was able to throw out the Spirit Wolf. So now, while there is still a fairly adequate board with that Channel Trog as that remaining Spirit Wolf, you still have Deathlore in a very advantageous position, especially when RNG plays in your favor onto the taunt minion with that Flame Juggler. So this is a great spot for him to be in, because now he can use his own Rock Biter, clear off the Tunnel Trog, have those 4 minions on board, and just continue to put that pressure onto it. Because if you look at Pro Caleb's hand, not only does he have that one Overload there, he doesn't have anything for this Master of Evolution to have. So he's forced to throw this down just to have the 4/5 body on to kind of combat some of the minions that you have on the side of Deathlore. So Pro Caleb kind of forced into a difficult position, and now, especially with this abusive Sergeant draw coming out of Deathlore, it's going to be a big swing in his advantage here on this 6 mana spot.
Yeah, and Deathlore is going to definitely want to clear this off, because if he doesn't, Pro Caleb could have punished him severely with the second Master of Evolution. He would have allowed Pro Caleb to trade in and then upgrade the minion into a larger one. So heals it, upgrades it, and that would have been one way for Pro Caleb to come back in this game. But Deathlore sniffed it out and was able to shut that down before it got started.
Yeah. So now the one Finley to rule them all gets thrown down, and you're kind of in a rough spot. You could technically go for the life tap to try to get some extra card draw because you're struggling, but you're already at 18 health. So you're not too sure if you want to do it. He actually does decide to go for it. So a very advantageous play by Pro Caleb just to try to get some extra card draw in. That is something that Shaman as a class lacks, but at the same time, you're just really struggling because like I said, you're already on 18 life points, so you're kind of really struggling in that sense. There is a taunt as well as a Divine Shield up on the other side, so Deathlore going to be able to put himself in a good spot. He's going to keep onto that, and with the full commit onto the board, Deathlore with full 7 minions, a taunt as well as a Divine Shield at his mercy, it's going to be putting Pro Caleb in a rough spot to be into.
I think it was a good pickup by Pro Caleb. I think the Hunter, while it's very tempting when you're running an aggressive deck, you could tell that he was behind. And this is one way for him to try to send this into the late game. And then obviously looking at Deathlore saying he is out of cards right now. He's going to be in top deck mode. And if you can clear off this board somehow, some way, then you could eventually bring this back with that life tap.
Yeah, and luckily there isn't a huge amount of power on the board, just because they are these 1-2 attack minions. But it will get scary if he draws into an overload card, because just as I say that, you want an overload card, you want some extra damage. Well, here's a Doom Hammer for your troubles. So now that's going to be a lot of extra damage now onto it, and without really any forms of taunts that Pro Caleb has. He does have the thing from below, but he's going to be top decking at this point. This game is almost a delay of the inevitable, as Deathlore showing up strong again in match 1.
Yeah, that's the that Doomhammer is on you. I'll make sure to tell Pro Caleb that you called that one. But that's going to set up lethal for Deathlore as he takes game number 1 very quickly. Turn 7, I mean, not the fastest, but definitely a pretty quick victory.
Yep, and it was all because he got that early board control. It forced Pro Caleb to go for pretty inefficient play with that Rock Biter down, especially with the Ardent Squire already on board. So the second that happened, that allowed the momentum shift to go into the favor of Deathlore, and he tightened up the reins, full speed ahead, and he didn't stop because it was just a consistent flood of the board, and that's something that these Totem Shamans are very good at. Shaman as a class in general, mentioned it before, is very good at. So being able to have that there, being able to keep pressure on the board, and without a Lightning Storm or any form of effective clear on Pro Caleb's side, that's going to be his Shaman going down, Deathlore going up 1 wins to none, and so now he has the Tempo Warrior and the Beast Druid remaining. So I wouldn't be surprised if Pro Caleb decides to try to switch something up himself, but Deathlore, with already being up 1 spot, definitely looking good.
Yeah, so here in game number 2, we got Deathlore up 1-0. He's going to switch to his Druid, and Pro Caleb going to give that Shaman another go. So we'll see if it's able to capitalize and even up the series at 1-1, which Pro Caleb would very much like here.
So he got pretty lucky. This Totem Shaman is actually going to be pretty solid against this Beast Druid as long as he's able to get some early board presence and try to combat a lot of the early pressure that the Beast Druid can pump out. Things are going to be good. He also has some pretty effective clear tools to get off of the minions that Deathlore is going to be able to throw out. But just looking at the hand that we have right here, it's not going to be as powerful as what he had hoped for, because Deathlore has he's got that he's got that Innervate available as well as the coin, so we could see a really early Druid of the Claw if he wants to. The Mounted Raptor is an option as well, and knowing how difficult his hand is right away, Pro Caleb is forced to throw out that Abusive Sergeant for turn 1.
Yeah, I was going to point that out from Deathlore. He intentionally kept Innervate and Druid of the Claw off the mulligan. So that's definitely a plan that he's expecting to have going forward. It'll shut down hopefully for him, it'll shut down the early game pressure from the Shaman with the taunt and prevent him from falling behind in the early game. It's a huge swing for him when that comes out.
Yeah, and so you have the swipe getting drawn up from the Raven Idol by Deathlore, and that's going to be really nice for him, especially when you're going against these Totem Shamans and whatnot, to try to have a little bit of extra clear. Especially, you do see Azure Drakes pop up time to time in these Beast Druid decks, so having that in combination with a swipe works out in their favor. But with the coin and the Innervate available, you got to do the smart choice. You got to go with the safe bet, and it's going to be the Druid of the Claw that he throws out with that 4/6 taunt. So now is kind of a decision-making for Pro Caleb. He can choose to clear this with the Lava Burst if he wants, but that's a huge form of removal already gone for one of these minions. But he is just going to decide to go for it anyways. Going to be able to get the clear, still maintain a little bit of board control with the Flame Juggler, and now the decision throws on a Deathlore, and because he was able to get a good coin Innervate out on that Druid of the Claw, he's still able to curve out nicely and just throw down that Mounted Raptor.
Yeah, I think that Lava Burst was a huge pickup for Pro Caleb. Otherwise, that Druid of the Claw would have ran rampant on all of his small minions and would have just got a crap ton of value from the Druid of the Claw there. So I think that was a really nice pickup from him, able to clear off the minion and keep one of your minions alive. And hopefully, he was hoping for a kind of a slow turn from Deathlore, because it really is only turn 3. We saw Druid of the Claw, so it kind of makes you feel like it's later in the game than it is. But he knew that only really a 2-drop was going to come out from Deathlore, and so he could take initiative this turn.
Most certainly. So a 4/4 body, definitely something that's gonna have to get off the board pretty quickly if you're Deathlore. Now, you do have essentially the extra swipe in your hand because you did pull that off of the Raven Idol. So that could be a tool of removal if you so choose. You've also got the Druid of the Saber, some Power of the Wilds, nice little 4 mana. It gets you some extra power onto that Gadgetzan Jouster as well. But because you have the extra swipe in hand, I wouldn't be surprised if he actually throws it down here. However, you know, there is some other options that Deathlore can have. So he's waiting himself out. He's kind of thinking, all right, what can Pro Caleb throw out on the next setup? Because he's going to have the full 5. There is a potential that the Doomhammer could come out or something a little bit more formidable as the minions go. But it looks like he's just going to end up going for that Druid of the Saber into that Power of the Wild to get a little bit of extra stuff on. And so there's going to be the 2 Panthers down. He's actually just going to ignore the 4/4 minion.
Yeah, I like this. I think the swipe would have been a little bit too defensive. If you have a larger minion, like say that Druid of the Claw had stuck around this late, maybe use the swipe to protect that. But using your entire turn to clear that off, and I think it might have put you too far behind going into Pro Caleb's turn here. He would have had all the initiative on the board. So I like that from Deathlore, not being too defensive with that swipe, realizing that he's still at 25 health, and he's in a pretty good position as long as he doesn't give all the initiative back to Pro Caleb intentionally.
And there wasn't a lot of cards in Pro Caleb's hand as well. So he did the math and he realized, all right, what does he actually have available for him to help? He knows now that there's only 1 card remaining in his hand. He threw down the Argent Horse Rider as well as the Argent Squire to kind of just get some extra body, but he's going to be able to respond pretty handily because there aren't that many minions in the hand of Pro Caleb. He knows that he can't burst him down that hard. He is still at 25 health, so he's just going to be able to throw down that Strangletorn Tiger. And now is where that swipe really is going to play into effect, because he's going to be able to swipe down that Flame Reef Faceless, can even kill it with the Stranglehorn if he so chooses. So holding on to that earlier, going to play out in his favor. He's going to be able to get a nice little clear onto this Faceless. He can even market the Yashari if he wants to as well. It's going to end up getting him to kill, but he'll get some cycle. He'll be able to get that on, and he'll still be able to save his swipe for something later. So he's got a couple extra options if he wants to do something.
Yeah, I like that. I think that'd be a pretty good start. Let's hover over that card because it's kind of newer. Some of the viewers may or may not know what it is, so we'll get to see it because he's going to play it right now. But I like to hover over the newer cards that came out from the expansion. So he does go with that play, and he cycles into not exactly what you want to go with here. It is a 4-drop. You can slam that down, but he's not able to do the hero power with it as well. So I think I'd still play it, unless you really want to value that hero power and slow down the 2-1. You could slam into there.
Yeah, see, I like throwing it down because you're assuming that he's going to trade into the 7/7, and that's the obvious decision. Now there are 2 cards left in Pro Caleb's hands. There's a chance that he's got a Lightning Blast to be able to get a clear onto it. But by and large, it's still going to be a lot of forced clear onto that 5/4, because the 5/4 can deal with a lot of the minions that come down. It deals with the thing from below. It clearly is going to deal with these 2/3s. So it's a little bit of extra help on the side of Deathlord just to get that big body on the field, and especially considering the solid commitment that Pro Caleb has to get everything done, he's going to be able to have a very effective swipe. He's also going to have that Savage Combatant down to not only clear off one but both of the Spirit Wolf. So really good decision by Deathlord, actually paying off, getting the clear and kind of preserving his life total in the process.
I was very surprised by Pro Caleb. He went aggressive. I guess he saw that he was fizzling out, and his win condition is to just keep aggressive and keep hitting his opponent in the face, especially with that 100 hero power. But it did allow for Deathlord to use his hero power to kill off one of your Spirit Wolves. So I understand why he did it. I'm just making the argument for going the other way.
So now we've really credited a lot to Daylor and his ability to kind of keep up the clear onto it, because Pro Caleb is essentially, running out of steam because he doesn't have that many cards. However, each time he throws onto something, each time he ends up using that hero power to help clear, he's reducing his life total. 10 health is not a lot left, because if Pro Caleb, say, draws the Doomhammer this turn and then has the Rockbiter or something of the similar sort, then he can really start to create a disastrous position for Deathlord. So Deathlord kind of on a hopeful spree, crossing his fingers, hoping that nothing too serious comes out of the top deck. And as Pro Caleb is drawing himself up, he's hoping Master of Evolution gives him something big onto it. It's not going to be the greatest. Actually, no, I stand corrected. It's actually going to be a pretty solid with the sparring partner. Going to soak up those saplings, going to force some extra preservation of his life total, and allow that steady shot to just keep going, keep pumping damage, because that's really what's needed. So a good effort by Pro Caleb. However, Deathlord does have the double Savage Roar in hand. So
yeah,
if he's able to keep some bodies down, then this could be game over.
Yeah, I think you run the Azure Drake into the taunt here, and then use the Savage Roar. Just one of them. You could use both if you want to. I think I like just using one of the Savage Roars, clearing off the 4/5, and then you can also throw down 2 3-mana minions. You got a Savage Roar in your back pocket with a decent sized board still.
You're kind of again relying on the fact that he doesn't draw anything good off of the top deck, because there is still the Lava Burst, so he can kill him with the Lava Burst here. I wouldn't be surprised if Deathlord makes sure that every time he throws something down, he's still able to at least armor up. Oh, I stand corrected on that. So fully committing to this style of play, hoping that something doesn't come off of the top deck for Pro Caleb. He does have the Lightning Bolt, so now is a decision of, do I just continue to push for damage onto it, because he essentially threatens lethal by Lightning Bolt, using the Lightning Bolt into the face, but he knows that the Shapeshift is available, so he's not going to be able to kill him, and he's going to be reliant on another setup. So it's kind of a decision making now of, do I go for phase or do I go for the 5/2? And he decides to go for the 5/2. I like this again because it just preserves a lot of his life total. He still has a lot of potential burst coming out from his top deck, so He's going to just hope for the best, and Deathlord are going to respond very quickly with that Wrath, trying to get some cycle in, trying to get some extra cards and some more tools to dispose of this Shaman.
Yeah, sure. Mounted Raptor having 3 or 1 health, or sorry, 2 or 1 health, not relevant at all. So I like that. Hopefully, he was hoping to pick up another minion, but that swipe might be pretty good here. It might be just what the doctor ordered to clear off this the second 4/5 here.
Yeah, he's gonna. It's pretty much a pretty easy decision for Deathlord to throw that down. He's going to probably throw down the swipe, kill it out with the sapling. He's kind of calculating his damage right now. I mean, we can look and see he's got 4, 6, 9, 10, 12 damage available. So he doesn't quite have lethal. So he's just going to play the smart game there. Going to throw down the Fandral as well as trade in the sapling.
Yeah, we can go back here to where Deathlord decided to keep the sapling alive instead of the Azure Drake. And that would have allowed for a really clean... The Azure Drake being alive, the spell power, not only is it more attack on its own, but it would have allowed for a 5-attack swipe there to clear out that minion. He would have been able to keep the Savage Roar, or the Azure Drake, alive even longer to take advantage of Savage Roar.
And that's going to be lethal there.
But it doesn't matter.
Druid of the Claw gets drawn in, Savage Roar as well, and Deathlord, wow, picking up a quick 2-0 here, dispelling of that Shaman 2 times in a row. So now we're kind of in the spot that we saw in our last semifinal match of, do you go with that Shaman for the 3rd time around? You know it's going to be going against that Tempo Warrior. So do you throw the Shaman onto that Tempo Warrior, or you go into something else? And we don't even have time to give analysis.
We're going to find out right now.
Right back into it. And 3rd time's a charm, man. 2 times in a row have we had that repeat for the potential final match. The tournament point here for Deathlord, that Tempo Warrior going up against this Shaman. So big scary opportunity for both of these players.
Yeah, one of the big cards for Pro Caleb that he hasn't been able to draw was that Doomhammer. We just saw him throw it back, which is understandable off the mulligan, but he hasn't been able to pick that up when he wanted to kind of close out the game and really put on the pressure a little bit more. So we'll see if he's able to do that here in his mid-game.
So decent start out here for Pro Caleb. He's got a decent curve on it. He was able to throw down the Argent Squire. He'll have the Totem Golem for next turn to be able to get something in. And this is do or die now for Pro Caleb. So it's going to be very interesting to see whether or not that draw does work out into his favor. It's working as of right now, especially because whatever minion Deathlord decides to throw down, he is turn 3, so you know it's either going to be the Acolyte or that Fierce Monkey. So whichever one comes down, that are going to most certainly going to be able to deal with onto it. So Acolyte of Pain gets thrown down. Flame Tongue Totem could quite easily come out to buff up that Argent Squire, get that kill, and just, keep that pressure on, because you have to essentially out-tempo the Tempo Warrior in this matchup. Shaman generally does well against Warrior just because of their ability to get minions and get bodies on the board very easily. It kind of just hurts the tempo that a lot of the Warriors can create. But this is a Tempo Warrior, so you're reliant on getting that early board control if you want any opportunity and really any chance of winning this match.
That Lightning Bolt, I was gonna point this out. That was a huge call by Pro Caleb. I think Deathlord was hoping to bait out an attack from the Totem Golem into the Acolyte of Pain so he could execute it next turn. But by him not doing that, using it with the Lightning Bolt, then now he's going to have to deal with it in another way and take more damage to the face.
Yeah, and this is just very efficient play now coming out of Pro Caleb, because it forced the blood to Ichor. Yes, there's the 2/2 body up, but you can decide to use the Flame Tongue Totem now. You still preserve at least one of your Defined Shields because you've got the 3/1, and actually he's going to decide to preserve both. No, as I say that, he was thinking whether or not to use that Rockbiter on himself and then clear out the 2/2 and preserve both of those Divine Shields. So he's thinking about it. At this, I would say no in this instance, but this is why he's playing in this tournament and I'm not. He's actually just going to decide to push face, ignore that 2/2. He knows that the Flame Tongue Totem was going down anyway, so just getting as much extra damage as he can, going to hopefully help him out. And now is a difficult spot because he does have enough to clear, but he's going to take some damage while he's doing it.
Yeah, that was that was a huge play by Deathlord. Able to have that taunt there. That was not what Pro Caleb was hoping to see coming down that turn. He was hoping to not have a taunt and be able to use that Doom Hammer like we were talking about to go face there. If he was able to push 4 damage face there, plus the double 1-drops, that would have been 6 damage. He would have put his opponent down to 10. Assuming no armor up, he would have had lethal with the Rock Biter. So maybe that was a play he was setting up, but those taunts are going to shut that down pretty quickly.
Yeah.
How double Rock Biter.
Yeah, he's going to be forced to use again more damage onto his face, and this is actually working out pretty well in the favor of Deathlord, because even though he's getting his life totals down, he's only sitting at essentially 18 effective health. He's still making sure that damage is getting done onto Pro Caleb, because Pro Caleb is down to 18. He's had to waste a lot of damage on the face. You know, 1 Rock Biter is down. You're almost sure that the Rock Biter's there. If you track the hand movements from the last turn, then there's a chance that you recognize that he was debating whether or not to throw the Rock Biter onto it. So you've got an idea that that's in the hands. So you're just going to have to try to figure out what you're going to do. And it at this point, no matter what play you make, you're making sure that you're armoring up, because you have to try to create as much distance from that shaman as possible. So he's going to do everything he can to try to preserve some of those life totals. And Pro Caleb is just going to be very simple, throw down that new Rubian Prophet, as well as call himself off a totem. And having that Stone Claw there, definitely going to help him out, because he's sitting on potential lethal coming in next turn. Has 13, so he will be 1 off lethal, actually, as we come into this.
Right, assuming an armor up, which will undoubtedly come out from Deathlord. But I think he would have played the Nerubian if he didn't get the taunt totem. I think he's valuing that taunt a little bit more than having it be. I'm actually kind of surprised why he didn't play the Nerubian Prophet there.
I think he knew that it was going to be cleared one way or another, and so he kind of wanted to. To me, I feel like it was more of a bluff of, okay, I have an extra burst card, so I'm going to force you to use extra removal to gain more armor. Now, it was kind of a calling of the bluff, because Deathlord did have the double AoE to get an extra 5 armor to help himself out. But that is kind of the best guess I could make, is make him use extra tools to clear itself out. But it's gonna not as much work in his favor. However, just as I say that, he does end up drawing the Master of Evolution, so he can try to hope for the best here as he tries to get that through. And having that 5/6 is definitely going to help him. It's going to force some extra removal, but lurking in the wayside, we know Deathlord does have that execute available, so not going to be as great. And as this game gets dragged on out, that armor and that armor smith really starting to gain some extra value in this match.
Yeah, Pro Caleb would have really liked the battle cry from the Guardian there, but unfortunately he doesn't get that when he transforms it, so that's unfortunate for him. And now some cycle from Deathlord picks up a couple taunts, and that's probably going to shut it out for him. It's going to be very difficult for Pro Caleb to come back in this one.
Yeah, you just drew 6 cards, and you still have 4 mana remaining. One of those is most certainly going to be a taunt, because you know he's running double monkey, double bloodhoof, so the chances of 6 cards and one of them being a taunt is pretty high. But as it stands, it looks like Deathlord is just going to prioritize getting off that clear. You have no reason not to, because you're sitting on 21 effective health, 9 armor that you're able to pull yourself out of. There's 1 card in Pro Caleb's hands that you're still assuming is that Rock Biter based on the last situation. And so now, as it comes through, Pro Caleb's just not even going to worry about it. 3 times the Shaman comes up to bat, and 3 times it strikes out, as Deathlord going to come away with the championship of the 24th Elephino Open, and doing it in stylish fashion for sure.
Yeah, very, very convincing win. We saw Pro Caleb take a 3-0 win in the semifinals. Yeah. And now Deathlord able to get a 3-0 win in the finals. So very convincing wins by both of these players in their matches, and very high skill level. It just shows, that they're both very high skill level players. It just didn't quite work out for Pro Caleb. He couldn't get past that Shaman. He kept throwing it up there, as you said. If he was able to get past that, we might have seen a completely different matchup. But it not being able to pull out a victory made the 3-0 victory possible. Maybe it looks a little bit more convincing than it could have been. He doesn't give Pro Caleb maybe some of the justification that he deserves, because he's a very high skill level player to make it all the way through a 256 player single elimination tournament. So it's unfortunate to see him go down in a 3-0 3-0 fashion.
True, but you do have to give a lot of credit to Deathlord. Something that we saw as a common trend throughout both the semifinals and finals is that he knew exactly when he could fully commit to the board. Yes. And when he needed to play a little bit more conservative. You saw that even if it required a couple pieces of removal, he was keeping the board control that he wanted, especially in the meta now. I mean, in card games in general, obviously board control is prevalent and it's kind of a top priority for most of these players. But especially in the current meta of Hearthstone that we see right now, having early board control is extremely powerful. You have those decks like the Miracle Rogue that rely on a lot of that cycle and that burst to really come through. But without that early presence, then they're not allowed to get there. And that's something that Deathlord was able to maintain throughout the entirety of both the semifinals as well as the finals match, is that presence and is that methodical placement of when to and when not to actually commit those minions onto the board. So you have to give credit where credit is due. 256 players is a lot of individuals to go through, and not only getting through that, but then 3-0ing in the finals, definitely something to be proud of.
Yeah, was not trying to take anything away from Deathlord at all. He definitely played extremely well and definitely deserving of the championship here. So congratulations to him. We will congratulations to Pro Caleb too, finishing second place, gets 2 points. Deathlord going to finish up with 3 points. So let's show you the bracket here again before we close it out. So we started off, we saw the first semifinals match. Deathlord took a 3-2 victory over the Maverick. And then we saw Pro Caleb take a 3-0 victory over Cito. And then in the championship, we just saw Deathlord take a 3-0 victory over Pro Caleb. So that'll wrap it up for us. If you're looking to get involved in some of these open tournaments and make a name and try to get into the summer preliminaries, definitely check out strivewire.com. They have a lot of open Hearthstone tournaments for both the European and the American servers. So definitely check them out if you want to get involved in the open Hearthstone tournament scene. But we will thank all of our players for competing in this tournament. Congratulations to the players that were able to go home with some points and some prize money. But we'll thank all of them for competing and wish them luck in future tournaments. And we'll thank Strivewire for allowing us to use their phenomenal website to host this tournament. And thank all you guys for watching. And thank you very much, Jump, for casting with me. Do you have any closing comments that you'd like to finish with?
Just another congratulations to Deathlord. Obviously, there is always the Open next week, and I wouldn't take this as a too detrimental of a hit if I'm Pro Caleb or any of the individuals that didn't finish, because something that's great about these open tournaments is that things can change week to week, and all it takes is one good streak. All it takes is one good set of draws, and you can put yourself in the same position that these two players are at. So if you're anyone trying to get into the scene or trying to rise up through the ranks of Hearthstone, no pun intended, it's definitely going to take tournaments like these and just a self-grind of yourself to find the deck list that best worked for you and your play style to try to get up and actually be one of these top tier players like what we've seen tonight.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you one more time for joining us, and really appreciate you guys watching. The next Elephino Open will be next week. So every Sunday we run this, and it'll be on, you can sign up for it on strivewire.com. The tournament itself will take place at 12 p.m. Central Daylight Time. And then we'll also check out the stream again, which will be at 6 p.m. Central Daylight Time. So you can check it out on my Twitch, which is on the screen there, twitch.tv/ElephinoHS. Or you can see it on Firebet's channel, which you're probably watching on right now, which is twitch.tv/Firebet. So he's a really great guy. I'm really thankful to him for allowing me to stream this on his channel every week. So shout out to him. But that'll do it for us. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you really enjoyed it.